Happy Monday! Welcome to the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM, streaming live on our YouTube channel, available to you on the ESPN 700 Sports app and at ESPN700sports.com. There's no reason for you not to be listening to the show, either live or after the fact. Appreciate you tuning in if you're here with us. What a weekend it was. Hopefully all of you enjoyed your Thanksgiving feasts. Hopefully everyone traveled home safely. My sincere desire is that everyone was able to get around where they needed to get around to. I was overseas. I was not able to stay dialed in on what the weather situation was. Zach is producing for me today. Zach, was there like any crazy East Coast thunderstorms or snowstorms that caused the airports to be clogged and congested and crazy this season?
Not that I know of. My brother flew in Tuesday and he left on Saturday, so nothing too congested, but it was pretty freezing here. I was up in Park City for Thanksgiving, but it was pretty cold up there as well.
Colder in Park City than down here, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
In any case, Utah gets a win to close out their football season. We'll talk about that. I think that was relatively important for the Utes to be able to do. All of us are probably, well, I assume most of you are in the same situation that I'm in, where you're kind of holding your breath and wondering when we're going to get a big announcement one way or another about Utah football, about the future of Utah football, particularly at the head coaching position. We'll get into that on the show some today. Gavin Peterson, new head coach for Utah women's basketball, coming off of the highest-ranked road win in history for the program. He's going to join us in 28 minutes on the show. Very much looking forward to that conversation. We tried to get him the Thursday after he was hired, but it didn't work out because they moved press conferences around and things like that. So looking forward to talking with Coach Peterson as he has not skipped a beat. Big win over Notre Dame for those Lady Running Utes. So we'll get into a little bit of that. Alex Markham stopping by to talk about the offensive coordinator search at the University of Utah. I think that a lot of fans feel like the offensive coordinator search and the QB search are linked arm in arm, are maybe holding hands for this Utah football program. I'm going to tell you this on the show right now. Temper your expectations. Calm yourself down. Don't get married to the idea of Ben Arbuckle and John Mateer coming to Salt Lake City. Don't do it to yourself. Is it a possibility? Certainly is. Is this a great job? It can be, yes. Is this a place where the most desirable transfer quarterback or one of the top three most desirable transfer quarterbacks on the market right now are going to end up or is likely to end up? Relax. I hope that that's how it works out. I will be elated if that's how it works out. It is going to take a very miraculous effort from Utah's collective in order to pull that off, and, of course, from the University Athletic Department, from whoever the head coach is, and from Mark Harlan to get Ben Arbuckle to Salt Lake City. And I know there's a game to react to, but because of the way that this year has gone, the more important thing for Utah football than having a conversation about like, oh, hey, look, you got your fifth win of the year. Instead of closing it out with 8 straight losses, it was 7 straight losses and then a win to send the seniors out the right way. I'm sincerely happy that it worked out that way for the Utes. I'm very pleased that the guys who are never going to suit up for this team again get to celebrate their last game as a victory. It really does mean something. It really does. But the more important thing for this program, and the thing that's unfortunately completely unrelated to that, completely unrelated to the offense, completely unrelated to the defense coming up with huge plays and a couple of pick sixes in order to seal a victory in Orlando. Yes, that can help you in recruiting. A little win to wash the bad taste out of your mouth before you get into the signing period, into the transfer portal period. Sure. Great, whatever. But the much more important topic of conversation today, tomorrow, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, next Monday, next Tuesday, until we have definitive answers. The much more important topic of discussion, even than how the conference championship race shakes out, even more important than the college football playoff projections, even more important than the ridiculousness of not one, not two, but 3 rivalry games this weekend ending in on-field brawls. Far more important than any of that is the direction that Utah football is going to take with Kyle Whittingham making his decision. We need to know what's happening today or tomorrow.
I agree. And like you said, like ending the season on a high note with a win, it's great.
Wonderful.
Wonderful. But the second thing, this is probably the most unhinged rivalry week that I've seen.
Well, we'll get to that.
Yeah,
but
we'll
again,
get to
that's
that.
not important right now because it is important. What's truly important, if you're tuning into ESPN 700, if you're listening to the home of the Utes, you want to know, is Kyle Whittingham your head coach moving forward? I think if he was going to say something otherwise, we would have heard that by now. I think we would have heard something probably on Sunday. I think Kyle Whittingham's coming back. I was split on this. I talked with everybody I know and trust in the organization, the hashtag sources, and nobody had a definitive answer. And not just because they were it felt to me, not like they were trying to play it close to the vest, because I don't think anybody has that answer except for Kyle Whittingham. And he needs to make a decision and make an announcement within the next 2 days.
No, I agree. And
The thing is, he probably should have put it out there today at the latest. Maybe we'll get something today. But tomorrow, you're making those final phone calls to high school recruits. Tomorrow, you're putting that final pitch out there. And everyone who's considering coming to the University of Utah wants to know who the head coach is. Now, because the transfer portal is much more of a thing, and it was always this way, but a lot of times guys committed to a coach instead of committing to a program. Now you truly are doing that. You're committing to a coach. And we've seen many examples of this and how it works out, sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse. Lincoln Riley and Caleb Williams are probably the most obvious example. Caleb Williams, highly recruited guy, goes to play for Lincoln Riley at Oklahoma. Very promising there in limited experience. And then, of course, Lincoln Riley gets the USC job. And Caleb Williams was just like, well, I'm going to play with you. I'm going to play for you. I committed to play for you. And, of course, USC can do things for you the same way that Oklahoma can do things for you. And it worked out for him in the effort of a Heisman Trophy and at least one 11-win season. And, of course, a huge draft position and the bonus that comes with that. Maybe it didn't work out for USC, but it certainly worked out for Caleb Williams as an individual. He won a Heisman bleeping trophy. It worked out for him to follow his coach. Yeah, he didn't win a national championship, but that didn't cause anyone to hesitate drafting him number 1. So it worked out for him as the player. And that's a different conversation than whether it works out for you as a school or whether it works out for you as a program. So now guys are committing more than they ever have to a coach. They're committing to play for a coach. They're committing to be part of a culture run by an individual, knowing that if that's what you fell in love with and that individual moves on to greener pastures, that you can follow him. Deion Sanders, Jackson State, Travis Hunter, and Shedeur Sanders committed to play for Deion, not to commit to play for an HBCU. That's not why they did that. Was it a point of pride for them that they were able to do that and they were still able to monetize it? Yes, of course. But they followed Coach Prime to Colorado, and guess what? Just like it worked out for Caleb Williams following Lincoln Riley, it's going to work out for Travis Hunter and for Shedeur following Deion. Shedeur is going to be drafted in the top 5. Travis Hunter is going to be drafted in the top 10, and he's probably going to win a Heisman Trophy. It works. The system works for these guys.
Yeah, definitely. And definitely with Kyle Whittingham's resume as well, we look at that stuff as well. But I think players who commit to Utah are going to have to know, is Whittingham staying or going next year? You know?
So the opening of early signing period is which is now the main signing period, is in 2 days. It's December 4th. And then the transfer portal officially opens December 9th, although you're getting more announcements from that. Yep. I actually put up a Twitter poll about the announcement that Miller Moss, the USC quarterback who took over after Caleb Williams got drafted and actually took over in the bowl game last year and played incredibly well, Miller Moss has decided he's moving on from USC. So he's got 1 year of eligibility left. Is Miller Moss a guy that you would like to have on a Utah football roster? I think that's attainable because his numbers aren't insane. 2,500-ish yards passing, 65%, 18 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, and he's a 1 year rental. You could probably maybe get a guy like that to show up and play at Utah. You could probably get him to come and say, all right, I want to. Now, he says he wants someone who's a championship contender. Didn't clarify whether he's talking about a national championship contender. Miller, they're not coming for you. Or just a conference championship contender. Now somebody who feels like my defense is great, my running game is great. Somebody like Miller Moss who makes fewer mistakes than a freshman would, or a rising sophomore or whatever. Maybe we can add somebody like him. So tell me if you'd like to see Miller Moss. I know all of you right now are going, dude, OC, no, we're going to get Ben Arbuckle, the Washington State offensive coordinator, and he's going to bring John Mateer with him. Yeah. In a perfect world, yes, wonderful, woohoo! We don't live in a perfect world. And Utah has never, ever pulled off that kind of a coup offensively. Yeah. Ever. It has not happened in the history of this program that you have grabbed the guy who everybody else in the country wants. Ben Arbuckle, you can find just as many, it's happening, he's coming to Oklahoma. You can, as many of those rumors, as many of those threads on some forum, as many of those conversations on Reddit, probably more of them than you can about Arbuckle's coming to Utah. If I were him, and I'm looking at it, I'm saying, all right, well, Oklahoma, that's going to be a place where I get unlimited resources. I'm going to get unlimited shots at the top recruits in the country. I'm going to get a ton of exposure. And I also have to accept the downside of that, where when you're at Oklahoma, if you have a single bad year, if there's a single 2-month stretch of growing pains, as I try and establish my offense and my new philosophy with the team, people are already getting out the pitchforks and the torches and coming for my head. And that's going to be less prevalent at a place like Utah, but we know what the conversation around being a Utah offensive coordinator looks like.
Yeah. And
we know what the rumor mill says. We know that there is this sentiment out there, and I'm not convinced it's altogether true, but you can't deny it either, that, hey, if you want me to come call your offense, you have to take off the leg irons and the shackles. You cannot limit me in what I want to do. I had one of the top passing offenses in the country. I was scoring 32 points a game, and that's what you need. So if that's what you need, you can't hamper me. You can't limit me. You can't tell me, no, we're punting this ball away and playing ball control, and we're flipping the field and letting our defense play to win. That is, valid or not, the criticism of Utah football under Kyle Whittingham, that it's hard to be successful as an offensive coordinator here. Again, it's far more complicated than just Kyle Whittingham won't let you do what you want to do. But if there is some of that conversation nagging in the back of any coordinator, any candidate's mind, and Ben Arbuckle is the sexy name on the list right now. He's the guy that everybody wants, and everybody wants him especially because it would make sense that someone who likes playing for him and has had success playing for him at Washington State, who has a lot of eligibility left and is a promising young quarterback who's likely to transfer this year, if you can get one, you could probably get the other. Can you get Ben Arbuckle and John Mateer in a package deal? Everybody's excited about it. I'm excited about the possibility too, but I'm telling you to pump the brakes just a little bit, or it's going to hurt you so bad if it doesn't happen. You're going to cry about it, and you're going to throw your hands up. You say, this program's never coming back. There's no way, we got no chance anymore. Look, Utah doesn't get the top name that everybody else wants. They've never done that offensively. Cam Rising wasn't that guy. Brian Johnson wasn't that guy. Alex Smith wasn't that guy. Zach Moss wasn't even that guy.
Neither was Snoop.
Tyler Huntley certainly wasn't that guy. Tyler Huntley was just an okay quarterback for 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then they figured out the right way to use him.
Yeah.
So, look, the most important question heading into the weekend after Utah got a nice win on the road to finish out the year, happy for you, proud of you, good job. The most important question was, when are we going to get an answer about the future? And that question is still unanswered. And you can't let it go unanswered very much longer. Now, if the reason you're not making any clarifying statements about your own future, if you're Kyle Whittingham, is because you're too busy trying to make this Arbuckle thing happen, or trying to make Brendan Marion happen, or trying to make whoever the next offensive coordinator happen, if that's the concern, great. Your priorities are correct. If you're too wrapped up in the minutia of moving money around and trying to figure out how you get Arbuckle and Mateer to the Hill, fine. You could wait until Tuesday to tell me that you're staying for one more year. Yeah. But if the plan is to ride off into the sunset now, to make the painful decision and to hand it over, you got to do it before it's time to sign these players, man. Mm-hmm. Like, Kyle Whittingham has been very clear about how it's collaborative now because the head coach in waiting for Morgan Scalley changes everything. It changes the whole dynamic of, well, I'm just going to go out and hire the guy that I want. Morgan Scalley is probably going to be more instrumental in getting whoever the new young offensive coordinator, and I knock on wood when I say young because I hope that's the direction they're going. He's going to be more important in that effort than Kyle Whittingham is, I believe. So maybe Morgan is the guy that's having that conversation with Ben Arbuckle more than Kyle is. I don't know. I don't have any clue how this recruitment is happening right now, how this sort of like cajoling of someone who has options. Please don't go to Oklahoma. Please come to Salt Lake City instead. It's a nicer place to live than Norman. That's absolutely true. And we probably can't pay you quite as much. Unfortunately, that is also true. But you've got a family. This is a wonderful place to raise a family. He's got a young son. Ben Arbuckle's got a wife and a young son. They're going to love it here in Salt Lake City. That's true. There's just so many things that go into this, and I wonder how much John Mateer's decision and desire plays into what Ben Arbuckle wants to do. Arbuckle is 29 years old, and he's already he's going to be. He's not this year, technically, because the Pac-12 is no longer a Power 5. He's going to be next year, wherever he's at, he's going to be a Power 4 offensive coordinator, whether he goes to Oklahoma or to Florida State or to Utah or whatever. Before he is 30 years of age, he's going to be calling plays for a Power 4 team that expects to win championships on a consistent basis. He's going to be making at least $1 million. Probably you have to pay him closer to $2 million as an offensive coordinator at 29 years of age. And knowing that, I believe that there's some kind of symbiotic relationship between the quarterback who has helped him establish his reputation and the guy who called the plays. If I'm Arbuckle, I'm saying, hey, Mateer, where would you rather be? You want to be at Oklahoma? You want to be at Florida State? You want to be at Utah? What do you think? Where would you like to be most? Where do you think we could be most successful together? I'm not 100% going to hitch my horse to this wagon, but I am going to think about it. You want to do this Lincoln Riley, Caleb Williams thing? We think we can pull that off? The more I think about it, the less likely it is that both of those guys end up in Salt Lake City. I mean, maybe Mateer loves it here. Maybe Mateer has like some kind of special affection for snowboarding that we can capitalize on. I just don't know. And that's where so many of the hopes and so much of the focus for this fan base, at least, is you got to have 2, 3, 4 backup plans John Mateer is from Texas. He didn't grow up watching the Utah-BYU rivalry.
Nope.
He didn't grow up wondering if he was going to wear crimson. He didn't there is a chance that guy would be like, oh, you know what? Oklahoma. I have a lot of high school teammates and high school opponents that went and played there. I watch that game and those games all the time. Do I know that Ben Arbuckle and John Mateer are attached at the hip in this decision-making process? No. Do I feel like there's absolutely some of that going on? Yeah, because it would make perfect sense for both the player and the coach. We always talk about how it makes sense for the player, but it actually makes a hell of a lot of sense for the coach also. If you don't make your decision as a grown adult with children about what a 20-year-old wants to do, but you also don't look at a place like Utah and say, yeah, I'll go there. I'll go coach there. What's your quarterback room look like? Oh, wow. Your quarterback room looks like trash right now. Yeah, I'll still take that job when I have an Oklahoma offer also. Or if you're like, your quarterback room doesn't look great, guys, but I'm going to fix that by bringing this dude with me. His name's John Mateer. He had 3,100 yards passing, 29 touchdowns, and 7 interceptions. And he also ran for like 800 yards.
Yeah, having like a Bo Nix type of season almost. Kind of.
I got to stop talking about it because I'm getting, it makes me more excited about the possibility and simultaneously feels less and less likely.
Hey, although it gets a little cold here, it's still really nice here in Salt Lake City.
If he could handle Pullman, Washington, if he could handle life on the Palouse, then he can handle it in Salt Lake City. Because Pullman is similar weather-wise, but just ugly. You know? At least here, when you get the snow-capped mountains, you're like, oh my gosh, why do I have to shovel this garbage? It's freezing. But then you look at look at that though. In Pullman, it's like, it went from brown to white and brown. If you're out there and you're listening and you are partial to the topography and geography of Washington State and its surrounds, I'm sorry. It's just not a great place. It's not as beautiful. It's not as picturesque as Salt Lake City, all right? I obviously have a preference for this place where I live.
Hey, speaking of recruitment, Utah just flipped a 3-star running back, Daniel Bray from SMU.
Love to see that. SMU, one-loss team this year. Likely, a strong candidate for a college football playoff appearance, even if they end up losing in the ACC title game to Clemson. So that's a big flip if you can make that happen. And I should be responsible and tell you that maybe that's the reason why we haven't heard Kyle Whittingham address it publicly for all of us, because he's too busy addressing it with all the recruits, telling the plans to the families, and those are the folks that their opinion of the matter and their thoughts on the matter actually are important for Kyle Whittingham and for Utah football future. Still, though, you could kill all birds with one stone if you just sat in front of a microphone and said, guys, I'm coming back for one more year. I'm coming back until the end of my contract. I've decided not to move on. I thought we would have an answer by now, and we don't. No answer just yet. We'll get one. When? Who knows?
We have no idea. But, yeah, I'm definitely, like you said, I'm sure he's telling recruiters, like, hey, I'm going to coach this year, or I'm going to coach.
Well, but that's the thing, is it felt like if you were watching the game, and I had to go back, I had to record it and watch it because of 22 hours of flights to get home. But at the end of the game, there were a lot of people who were like, oh, look at that. He's emotional, more emotional than usual. His wife's down there with him, and he's kind of briskly walking off the field. What's his demeanor in the post-game presser? How's he talking? Does he seem melancholy? Right? All of us are sitting here trying to figure out the answer. He was asked the question, hey, so this is the last game of the year. There's no bowl game. You guys aren't bowl eligible. Have you decided what you want to do? He just said, no, I'm not going to answer that right now. I don't want to take any of the focus away from the seniors. Well, that made me think he's done because him retiring would be the number one story in the last 10 years of Utah sports. And nobody would be having a conversation about how admirably Mekhi Bernard performed this year and how the last 4 games, especially Lander Barton, kind of grew into what he was supposed to be, and how Jaron Kump was just a stalwart for this team, and how Junior Tafuna was such a great leader. No one would be talking about the players if Kyle Whittingham said, I'm retiring. We're not talking about the players anyway. Instead, we're saying, are you going to retire? What's happening? And we're trying to psychoanalyze what it means that he won't answer the question, how quickly he walks, the tone of his voice, all that stuff. Clarification is very, very important, people. You need to see it.
Yeah, it is, and we're probably going to hear at some point, when we didn't know when the starting quarterback was for BYU and Utah. We didn't know it was going to be Brandon Rose. We didn't know it was going to be Isaac Wilson, and he's pretty much doing the same thing with his decision.
And by the way, his future and the decision on his future, only his to make, but clarity on it is about 6,000 times more important than telling people who the starting quarterback's going to be.
No, I agree. And I'm just kind of
it's the direction of the program. It's the decision-making process for the future building blocks of the program, for the recruits. Ugh. You could tell I'm a little frustrated by the lack of information. And by the way, even when you feel like you're #sourced, you're not getting a lot of clarity. All right, I want to remind everyone before we take a break, come back with Gavin Peterson. I want to remind all of you about virtual mail that is made available to you by our friends over at PostNet. Not only are they going to handle your virtual mail for you, where your physical mail is scanned to your phone or your computer, you decide whether you want to forward, recycle, shred, you want to pick it up at the local PostNet center, whatever. A virtual mailbox is convenient and amazing. But this time of year, you need to be getting, in fact, you have 8 days left to get your photos taken, to get your invitation pattern selected, to get them sent out. PostNet's going to help you out. They're going to hook you up with a big fat deal on it, and you got to get it done within the next week. Go to Draper, go to North Salt Lake, tell them that OC sent you, and tell them that you want 50 of this 3x5 card stock with the little glittery happy holidays on it, that you want the adorable picture of your dog and your child, or your dogs and your children, or the entire family, or whatever. They're going to hook you up. They're going to make sure that they are printed properly, that they are addressed properly, that they are delivered promptly. PostNet is going to be the one-stop shop to solve all of your Christmas and holiday card woes. Tell them OC sent you, and trust PostNet. Dependable solutions for all of your printing and shipping needs. Gavin Peterson, head coach of the Utah women's basketball team, coming off the biggest win on the road in program history, joins me next. It's the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM, part of the Utah ESPN radio network. Kennedy McQueen three-pointer against Mississippi State. That sound courtesy of, well, us, ESPN 700 and the Utah Sports Radio Network. My guy Tyson Ewing on the call there. As we welcome in the new head coach for Utah women's basketball, Gavin Peterson, to the Sean O'Connell Show for the very first time. Coach Peterson, welcome. How are you?
Awesome, man. Thank you for having me. Pleasure to be on here today.
Yeah, we were hoping we could make this happen shortly after the announcement came down, and then the press conference got moved and all this. So I really appreciate you giving us some time today after a wild Thanksgiving weekend. Really impressive. Congratulations, by the way. You didn't waste a lot of time in getting the highest ranked road win in program history by upsetting Notre Dame. So I guess just hitting the ground running.
Yeah, there's been little time other than focusing on the opponents that we've been scheduled to play, and credit to our kids. They've gotten that fire going, and hopefully we're going to continue to build on that as we close out our preseason schedule here in December.
I know you're focused on what's coming and the next opponents and all that stuff, but I hope you'll indulge me just a little bit and take me back to how the process went when you got the phone call, or how you found out that Lynn Roberts was going to be moving on and she was going to take that LA Sparks job. And obviously, you emerge as the obvious and the number one guy, and you end up taking the job. But what was that moment, or those moments, like when you found out that someone you've worked so closely with, that we all love here in this community, was kind of somewhat, at least for me, unexpectedly going to be moving on?
Yeah, I think for all of us, unexpected. I found out Sunday morning after practice from Lynn, and the first thought was, holy crap, that is awesome. Like, I gave her a big hug. She's been my friend. She's family to me, so I was really excited for her. And then you sit down and it's like, what does that mean now for all of us that are still here at Utah? So the process moved really quickly. Got to chat with Mark Harlan and when they told me I was their guy, it was very humbling. I was very thankful to be given that opportunity. And then from there, it was immediate attention to our current players, helping them navigate through this, unforeseen and kind of like unexpected decision that was being made. And then, turning to the recruits that we need to secure and get their recommitment to the University of Utah. So it's been a whirlwind. I don't think it's stopped, but it is settling in a little bit, and that's good for all of us. So we can just focus on basketball. But yeah, it's been an amazing, crazy 2 weeks. Again, you always prepare yourself for, like, wow, if I get the opportunity to become a head coach, this is what I'm going to do. Well, I don't think anybody has this on their bingo card in terms of the process and the time frame in which all of this happened. So I'm just fortunate to be surrounded by a great coaching staff, great support staff, and then, getting the opportunity to coach these young women who are resilient, and they have been for the last few years. And I love every one of them.
What do you think it says about the culture in place, about the players that you have, that something this seismic can happen when you've already started a season, and at least in the early goings here, it does not appear like the girls have really skipped a beat. Like, your team is playing the way that I thought that they were going to play, whether it was Lynn Roberts or it's Gavin Peterson or it's, me going up there and coaching. That actually would be really devastatingly bad for the program. But like, the timing of this is so unique. It doesn't happen this way very often in other sports, but because of the WNBA calendar being kind of opposite the women's basketball calendar at the NCAA level, it creates this weird timing situation. And I imagine for a player that could be very, very challenging, but your team seems to be handling it as well as anybody can. What does that say about your group?
Yeah, I think it speaks volumes to the culture that we have and the foundation and the core principles that we have here at Utah for women's basketball. They're going to remain the same. And so, I told them our culture will be tested because this is just, it's uncharted territory for all of us. But what we can do and what we will do is lean on each other. I'm going to lean on them. There was no runway for me to become a head coach. Lynn's given me the opportunity to prepare myself for this, and I'm so indebted to her for that. But there is no manual right now. It's like somebody's driving the plane and then they jump out, and it's like, well, here I go. Like, I got to slide over. So I'm gonna lean on them, our players. I want them to lean in on each other and lean on me as well, and our coaching staff. And so I think by getting our circle to tighten up a little bit has been everything. They are 100% bought in, and we are led by some very, very good. That's gonna bode well for us as the season moves on.
How do you handle? You're coming off a trip to Grand Caymans, so it's a business trip. It looks glamorous for all of us, right? Because it's like, oh, tropical islands, and you're there, you're playing basketball. I've been an athlete myself enough times to know that, like, it's a business trip, and hopefully you guys are able to have a nice dinner and maybe, I don't know, go splash around in the water or something, but you got to stay focused. So what was that trip like? And obviously, capping it with a win over the number 3 team in the country probably felt pretty good.
Yeah, it definitely made the journey back to Salt Lake City a lot better, having won that second game. But, tournaments like this are so crucial, I think, to your team camaraderie, making memories together. And we did that. We were able to have a great Thanksgiving meal on Wednesday night before we took the court against Mississippi State on Thursday night. And, we had families that did make the trip of our players join us for that Thanksgiving meal. And it's just been really cool because the encouragement and support that I've heard from the families and our players, it's just been amazing. So, we wanted to make sure that, our family, our circle, that they felt valued, and we could enjoy that time together. And as for kind of the balancing act, I grew up starting my coaching career at the University of Hawaii, and we used to put on tournaments, like 3 of them every preseason. And I think just starting from way back then, I've always observed the how to do it and how not to do it. And the teams that come into their game sunburnt and not ready to roll usually take the L's and go home sad. So it's a healthy balance, and we gave our kids some beach time, some fun time out in the sun, family time and all that. And then, as game time approaches, you reel them in a little bit and just have them focus on the task at hand, which they did. Thursday's night game didn't go the way we wanted it to, but I was extremely proud of the fight that we showed in our third and fourth quarter, which I think led to our great performance on Saturday.
Utah women's basketball head coach Gavin Peterson is my guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show. A couple more minutes with him. Have you gotten used to being called that, by the way? Like, that title, is it sunk in? Do you have
No.
Do you have the nameplate? Is that thing has it even been manufactured yet? The official head coach stuff?
No, I don't think it has been. Somebody on our staff moved my nameplate to the head coach's office, which I'm not even in. I'm talking to you right now from my office that I've been in here for year 10 right now. So I have not even moved anything over. Haven't had time to. I might have some time this afternoon or maybe early tomorrow to kind of get my stuff over there to the next office. But no, I am not. I have not gotten used to it yet. I've had people tell me my email signature needs to change, all these different things. Social media needed to change and all that stuff. And I'm like, wow, okay. Yep, it will hit me. The great thing, though, and the comfort of everything is once basketball becomes the basketball part of things, it's on autopilot there. It's all of the other things that I've still got to learn to navigate through while still coaching basketball. But, it'll work its way out. And like I said, I'm leaning on some great people here in our coaching staff and our players, trusting them to take care of business. And that's the plan.
So from a big picture perspective, look, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And obviously you've been working very closely with Lynn Roberts for a long time. So this program does not need an overhaul. The culture does not need a significant change. I would make an argument that the style of basketball and the X's and O's don't need to be altered drastically. But I imagine you're the head coach, and as the role progresses for you, there will be, a bit of a stamp, a bit of a Gavin Peterson stamp on it that maybe didn't exist. Have you figured out what that's going to be yet? Do you know how it's going to be different? If we're having this conversation in 2 years, than in early December of 2024.
That's a great question, and I have not had even time to think that deeply about it. I do think the schemes, the foundation that we have from a basketball standpoint is going to be very, very similar to what Coach Roberts and myself we've done here for 9 seasons before this one. So not much change there. We're going to train the same. We're still going to put a lot of weight into our shot quality, defensive schemes, and all those type of things are going to be the same. And then obviously from a personality standpoint, we're not the same people. There are very similar traits, both passionate, both are competitors, and that's where I think people will see the difference. And what that's going to look like in 2 years, I don't know, but I'll let everybody else decide in terms of what they can nitpick and see what the differences are. But on the court, we want to remain relevant on the national scale. We want Utah basketball, when people mention that, to have the same type of, like, wow, there's a high-scoring offense, a team that plays together, and a team that is going to compete every single night. And you better put on your hard hat when you play Utah women's basketball.
Couple more questions here with Gavin Peterson, head coach at Utah women's basketball. It'll be Utah State on Wednesday. Where are the Aggies dangerous?
They shoot a lot of three-point shots. They try to play up-tempo and try to force you to play out of control. I'm very happy for their head coach, Wes Brooks, who actually was here for our year 1 and year 2 at the University of Utah. So a very cool game because we're playing at the Delta Center, 7 p.m. on Wednesday night. And what a great opportunity for both programs, both women's basketball programs, to get to play where the Utah Jazz play. I think it's just so cool. What a great opportunity. But, yeah, we've got to get to practice tomorrow and make sure that we're sharp. We're playing to a pace and a tempo that we like while staying under control. They try to turn you over as much as possible. And if, we turn the ball over and we give up three-pointers, it's going to be a very close game. And so we can control those two, and we're going to really focus on those two things as we head into practice tomorrow.
And then last thing before I let you go, first year in the Big 12 Conference, and all the fans, all Utah associated folks are learning that there are some differences and that expectations or whatever have to be adjusted. Look, Big 12 men's basketball has a reputation as the deepest, best league in the land. You're coming from a Pac-12 women's basketball league that was thought of in very similar fashion. But, of course, the Big 12 has a bunch of great women's basketball programs as well. So as you get into Big 12 play, how different of a style is that going to be than what you saw in the Pac-12?
I think the style might be a little different. I do think each institution in the Big 12, they have their unique way of playing, and we're going to figure that out as we go. But what we can focus on and what we can control is how we play. And that's going to be our biggest charge is teams are going to have to game plan for us. We have a lot of veteran leadership on our team. They've played a lot of big game minutes over the course of the last 3 years. So we're going to rely on that experience to carry us through. I think we play on the road at Arizona. We play at Iowa State, at Baylor, at TCU, and that's just the first 3 weeks of the season. So, we got to withstand that storm, and then I think we can settle in. And as the conference season gets going, it can be very favorable over the course of our last 8 games. So, hopefully we find our footing, and, we're going to go in there guns a-blazing. We're going to spit nails and get after them from the word go.
Coach, appreciate your time today. Good luck moving forward, and we'll be chatting again soon.
Awesome. I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much, and go Utes.
Gavin Peterson, new head coach at Utah women's basketball. They took out number 3 in the country, Notre Dame, 78-67 in the Grand Cayman Islands, second game of that tournament. knocked off the number 3 team in the country, which is the highest ranked on-the-road win Utah women's basketball has ever achieved under a brand-new head coach in Gavin Peterson, who didn't even know he was going to get that job. That's, man, good for him. By the way, your lady running Utes in the also receiving votes category now in the top 25. Not there yet, but starting to get a little bit of attention on the national scene. Utah State, then Princeton, then Washington before they start Big 12 play with Arizona State, Arizona, and Iowa State. All right, time for the hot lunch. That's coming up next. We'll talk about some Big 12 football. We know what the conference championship game is going to look like. We know that it's probably going to be a one-bid league when the college football playoff situation finally comes into shape. I'm going to tell you why that should not be the case, why it's criminal the Big 12 is being overlooked as a football conference in 2024. Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM, part of the Utah ESPN radio network. Welcome back to the Sean O'Connell Show for the Hot Lunch. Hot Lunch today brought to you by Lemon Shark Poke. Right here on 300 South in the Judge Building on the ground floor. Fresh fish, delicious locally sourced ingredients. They get their fish from the same place the white clay tablecloth restaurants get their fish from. Flown in every single day. Still very reasonably priced. I don't know how they pull that off, but all I know is that the food is delicious. Go in there, get the OC bowl, show you salmon, edamame, ginger, a little bit of mango, a little bit of pineapple. Put whatever sauce you want on it. And then add the garlic crunchies on top. Woo! I'm getting hungry just thinking about it.
Me too.
We'll get to the hot lunch here in just 1 second. Another great partner here that's really helped us out. My lower back, I have the lower back of like an 85-year-old man. And I've been rubbing the Problem Salved, lavender-scented Problem Salved from Farmer and Chemist on my lower back for the last week and a half. Those long flights, traveling, you know how it is. You get a little bit stiff, your back locks up. Not if you've got the Problem Salved with the CBD, the CBG, and even just a tiny little bit of THC in there. Jeff from Farmer and Chemist joins us to talk about not just this, but all the great products they have. Hey, Jeff, how are you?
Awesome. How are you?
Doing all right. So I haven't tried I've got like the Problem Salved that's just the rub on. I haven't done the roll on, the warming gel, the hot spot. I think I might have to come in and grab some of the hot spot. Same kind of treatment, right? Pain relief, anti-inflammatory.
Yeah, very similar uses, probably slightly different roles. So I think the hot spot or the chill out would be maybe like pre and post workout, different concentrations of CBD, and then you fill it a little bit differently. Where the Problem Salved has 2,000 milligrams in a 1 ounce jar, it's super potent. You just need a little bit on there, and it's probably more for chronic pain, but it's an amazing product.
It's great. I can speak to it, not just for me, not just for the wife, not just for humans. You have products even for the pets that people, this time of year, everyone's thinking, what do I get my pet? The holidays are coming up. The pets don't care, but we certainly do. You have products for the four-legged friends in the house.
Yeah, pets and specifically mammals get stressed out just like humans do, and CBD actually works the same way in dogs and cats than it does in humans. So it's really good for anxiety and help them sleep, and also for pain. So really what we would love to do is if anybody has any questions about CBD or any other of the cannabinoids or dosing or anything like that, we're all pharmacy trained. A lot of us are pharmacists that work at Farmer and Chemist. We would love to have a conversation and have an honest conversation about how it works, where it doesn't work, what it is and what it isn't.
Not only can you get the great products, but you can get directed on which products are going to work for your particular need, and you're going to be, from a name you can trust, from a place you can trust, from professionals you can trust, and then you're going to get a great discount because you're an ESPN 700 listener, right, Jeff?
Yeah, that's right. So so first part of that, if you're using something for sleep, it's probably a little bit differently than for like knee pain. So finding the right product, using it the right way is super key. But yeah, come in, talk to us. If you mention ESPN 700 either in the store or online, we will take 20% off of any order.
And we'll be giving away a gift card in our trivia section today, redeemable in-store down there in historic Main Street in Midvale. Jeff, always a pleasure. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
Jeff Dunn from Farmer and Chemist. All right, the hot lunch. I'm going to make it short and sweet. Big 12, just like the Pac-12 was in football, being trashed, being dumped on, being underranked, because it is a deep conference with a lot of parity, all right? The SEC had a disastrous weekend again. They're still going to work out where they got 4 or 5 teams in the college football playoff. The Big 12 is going to get 1. And you know why this is going to bother me at the end of the season? Because the Big 12 is going to have 1 college football playoff team, and they're probably going to have either the first place or second place guy in the Coach of the Year conversation. Kenny Dillingham deserves National Coach of the Year recognition. He was picked to finish dead last in the Big 12 conference, and his team has a great shot to win the whole thing, to win the league in only his second year as head coach. One of the youngest guys with the head coaching position in the country, the youngest head coach in the country, tied actually for that, in Power 4 football at least. So the coach of the year might be from this conference, and the Heisman Trophy winner is likely to be from this conference. So you're telling me that the worst conference in Power 4 football has the best coach and the best player, but they're still the worst conference? It just doesn't make a lot of sense.
No, I agree with you. It does not make any sense at all.
And look, the way that the conference championship game is working out, look, BYU doesn't get to play in it after a stellar, incredible year for BYU. And I see the troglodytes. I see all of the other people in the the low-hanging fruit in the fan bases, the bottom dwellers of these other fan bases, trying to dunk on BYU for having a 10-win season. I'm talking to you, Utah fans. If you are one of the vocal minority that has made this fan base so insufferable for the rest of the Big 12, and now your thing is, BYU, you only had 10 wins, stop. Just be silent.
Double-digit wins are a big thing, for sure.
I know they don't get to play. They didn't win the tiebreaker. I know, right? They don't get to compete for the conference championship. And guess what? If there was justice in the college football world and the Big 12 conference was viewed like the ACC is viewed even. I'm not asking for Big 10 or SEC reputation. If the Big 12 was viewed at least equal to the ACC conference, BYU would have a great shot of making a college football playoff this year. So let's not do this ugly thing where just because you want someone else to be miserable like you are miserable because your team had a bad year, where you point a finger and laugh at someone who had 5 more wins than you and beat you in the head-to-head. Like, it's just a bad look. It's an unlikable and completely not understandable take to have. Ha ha! I know, they're the rival.
Yeah.
They are. And you don't like to cheer for them? You don't have to cheer for them. But you can't mock them for having a 10-win season. There's nothing there. There's nothing there for you to be like, but look, you didn't make it in the – that's right. Because of the tiebreakers and because other teams won their head-to-heads and did what was necessary and like – but you don't get to make fun of BYU for having a 10-win season.
Yeah, and so they're going to a bowl game.
If you're part of the Utah fan base that's doing that right now, just don't. Just stop. You can just delete the tweets that you've already done that. And I know that you're doing it to get under the skin of the opposing fan base. But you're making yourself look bad. Don't do it. This is the public service announcement. If you beat them head-to-head, you can make fun of them. If you have a better season than they did, you can make fun of them. If they had a significantly better season and they beat you head-to-head, you don't get to make fun of them. That's the thing.
Yeah, they're going to a bowl game,
They get the bragging rights this year, and hopefully you get the bragging rights back next year. And then hopefully for 10 years after that, you get the bragging rights. But you can't do it this year, guys. And I know that there's not actually a lot of Utah fans who are doing it, but that's the Hot Lunch public service announcement for those people who are. Before I take a break, we're going to come back with Alex Markham, talk about the Utah offensive coordinator situation, talk about why we haven't got an announcement on Coach Witt's future yet, and a signing day for high school players rapidly approaching only a couple days from now. We'll talk about all those things with Alex Markham, Utah Insider with Rivals. Before we get there, though, I want to remind you this cold weather situation that is hurtling towards us is going to smack you in the face with the reminder that you need to get those windows fixed. Advanced Window Products is offering their biggest discounts of the year, not only on the windows themselves, which are manufactured, sold, serviced locally. It's a one-stop shop right here in Salt Lake City. Lifetime warranty is handled right here with no middleman, so you're not going to get the runaround. Not only are they going to give you the best discounts of the year on the windows themselves, but if you need window treatments, if you need blinds and drapes and all that kind of stuff, they can get you covered there as well. I know what you're thinking, man, I'm spending a lot of money on these Black Friday sales. I'm spending a lot of money on this Christmas vacation. I'm spending a lot of money on this, on that, on the gifts, whatever. Just get on the schedule today, and you don't actually have to buy the windows. You don't have to pay for the windows until the spring when you get them installed if you need to hold off on that. They also have financing options available to where you might actually be saving money getting the new windows because your payment's going to be lower than the savings you get on the energy efficiency benefits. If you don't believe me, you don't have to believe me. Call Advanced Windows and let them prove it to you. Nate Orchard, Jake, these guys take care of all of us. They will take care of you. Get on the schedule, 801-850-9100. Tell them OC sent you at Advanced Windows, #1 replacement window company in Utah, and it's all handled right here by people you trust. Alex Markham next on the Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM, part of the Utah ESPN Radio Network. Highlights, 60-yard pick six, courtesy of the Utah Sports Radio Network. Bill Riley on the call. Zamaya Vaughn actually named Big 12 Defensive Player of the Week in the final weekend of the season. Coming into the year, we thought that there'd be a Ute named to that or considered for that award every single week, and it just didn't play out that way. So good to see Utah get a win, the final game of the season, on the road at the Bounce House, defeating a UCF team that had been putting up massive offensive numbers all year long. And Utah able to finish the season 5-7, still missing a bowl game, 28-14 victory over the Golden Knights. Sean O'Connell Show here on ESPN 792.1 FM. We welcome in Utah insider Alex Markham from Rivals. Alex, welcome back. How are you?
Oh, Steve, how are you, buddy? I'm doing good, man.
Did you have a good Thanksgiving weekend?
It was good. It was chill, just what was needed. So, how about you?
Yeah, man, it was not chill. I was flying to Saudi Arabia and back, calling fights and stuff, but it was good. You know, if that's my biggest problem, I get to go do a dream job. I don't have anything to complain about. All right, let's. We're going to get to some big picture stuff with the Utes here in a second, but I want to talk about this game, season-ending game for the Utes, 28-14 victory over UCF. And you saw some young players emerge and have big games. Zacharias Williams had a bit of a breakout, if we can call it that. You saw the defense with a couple of pick sixes. So good things there. Let's start with Zacharias Williams. This is a guy we've seen in these last couple of games getting some opportunities. He goes 6 catches for 72 yards in this one. Not only this game, but the future for the Utes from this 6'2" freshman. What do you see as his upside?
It's nuts, right? I mean, the beauty of it too is that they preserved his red shirt, so that's huge. So he'll come in as a red shirt freshman next year. But you know, the sky's the limit for him. I mean, you're already looking at it like, I mean, just with some of the plays that he was making, it's like, okay, you know, Utah's going to get a guy or two in the portal. Like, you know, what type of difference maker can those guys be? But you're looking at a guy right here, right now, that could be one of the main targets next year and be such a difference maker already, you know? And so it's a big deal just to see that kind of breakout. You know, it's something that, you know, with as rough as the season had been going, you were just waiting for something like that to happen. It was a refreshing thing to see. You know, he's somebody that, you know, he was a wanted commodity last year. It actually came down to the very end where USC thought that they were going to be getting him, and Utah was able to fend that off. And so it was a big get, and it's paying off. It's nice to see a young receiver really breaking out and really developing like that. And then you can't forget Dadrian Zipperer too, because I mean those two guys right there, you know, Zipperer with him being a deep threat. Those are two really nice young wide receivers to really be able to build around.
Luke Batari, the legend, finishes his career undefeated as a starter. Like, I don't know how many guys were 2-0 as starters, and between the two games passed for less than 200 yards, but Batari did it, and I love it.
Hey, you know what? I love it, but the thing that is just painful about that, Kay, is if Utah just would have been able to manage the quarterback situation, you know, right throughout the year, which, you know, yeah, I mean, anybody can do second guessing, right? To me, and I've been saying this for weeks, you just needed a guy that could get in there, manage the offense, and dink and dunk and move the ball up and down the field, because Utah still had a phenomenal defense for the most part this year, right? You know, so it's like you really look at that, it's just like, you know, what could have been, right? And, you know, I'm not saying Batari would have been the answer, you know, but he was able to do just enough and keep the ball moving, and the guys fed off it, and, you know, allowed the defense to make plays, didn't put the defense in bad situations.
So it was good to see another big game from the defense. A couple of pick sixes, you know, and that's 3 for the year, when there was a lot of hand-wringing a couple weeks ago, like, oh, the streak's going to get broken. They finished with 3 for the year. Lander Barton had another big game, 2 sacks. These last, I think it's been 4 games, the last 4 games of the year, really since the return of Corrine Reed off his injury. Lander Barton played like I thought Lander Barton was going to play all year. And I think there's a silver lining here. I think if Lander Barton plays that well all year long, he's definitively off to the NFL draft, because it was only a 4-game sample size that he was really close to his best. I don't know what his NFL prospect looks like. I don't know what his draft grade's going to look like. Do you think that Lander Barton comes back for another year at Utah?
I think he does, but at the same time, too, he's going to submit the draft grades, just like anybody would, and you just don't know, what the scouts are going to go by just from bloodline wise. I mean, look at what Cody's doing right now, And so he is one of those guys that he popped so much at the end of the year, and then everybody had seen what he had done before his injury last year. That if he gets a good enough draft grade, he can get into the combine, and he can make up for the subpar first part of the year that he was having, so it'll be really interesting to see a lot of it. You mentioned Karene Reed obviously getting back, and he seemed so much more comfortable after that. Part of it too, I wonder, I know his foot injury wasn't one of the worst ones that you can get. It was one of the easier ones to be able to come back from, but you still got to wonder, just like when he was completely fully healthy off of that and feeling comfortable, and if that took some time in the season as well. And so we definitely saw, what everybody's come to know from him. And it is like you said, I mean, Utah might get the benefit of his slow start, being able to see him back for one more year, and it would be gigantic for this defense.
Smith Snowden, another guy who he played well all year, but these last few games, I think really popped. And, I made a point to ask him when I hosted the coaches show for Bill, because everyone's going to be coming after these young guys, right? After a down year for Utah football, with the transfer portal being free agency, guys like Smith Snowden, who had plenty of options, plenty of offers when he was coming out of high school, and now it's translating on the college level, he's going to have options. And I asked him point blank if he's always going to be a Ute, and he said, no doubt, and look, he could be lying, but I don't think that he is. Is Smith Snowden like one of the next great Utah defensive backs? Seems like he has the tools and the work ethic. Do you think that when it's all said and done with him, we'll be talking about him the way we did guys like, Jalen Phillips, Clark Phillips?
Jalen Johnson.
Jalen Johnson,
yeah,
Clark Phillips.
I really feel like that's a possibility with him. The nice thing is Utah's got a really nice nucleus with both him and Cam Calhoun. So bringing both of them back would be absolutely huge. Smith is he's got all the tools, he was brought up the right way, and his dad has really trained him and coached him well to the point where, it's almost like Clark Phillips all over again, just with how he goes about his business and his approach. And I mean, those are the guys that you want to bet on, because they're a safe bet, and they're going to do big things. So he's definitely going to be one of the next big ones. Again, though, at the same time too, I mean, who's gonna pop more over these next couple of years, him or Cam Calhoun? And that's a fun situation to sit back and think of.
That's a good problem to have if there's a couple of guys who could be pro prospects on your defensive backfield. Alex Markham's our guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show, talking Utah football, finishing the season with a win. And look, that's great, but the big picture stuff is far more important for Utah right now. Early signing day for high school recruits in 2024 for the 2025 class is 2 days from now. And we're getting some announcements, like one of the top kickers in the country coming to Utah. Zach, my producer, just put me onto a flip from another talented player, at least a couple of 3-star, 4-star guys showing some interest in Utah despite the bad year. But we're still waiting on clarity on a decision for Kyle Whittingham's future, whether this is going to be his program or it's going to be Morgan Scalley's program. As you take a look at the possibilities and the fact that we don't really know what's being said to these recruits right now. I know you're dialed in on that front.
Yeah, when it's come down to that with the recruits, I know that they've kind of put the wheels in motion the last couple of years where, you and me have talked. I mean, the Morgan thing has been the plan. They just made it more public this year by announcing that. And so they've been letting the recruits know the last couple of years about the succession plan. And so really when it comes down to it, there's no surprises. And so they've done it right. They've handled it the right way. Every recruit that I've talked to, is comfortable with that, and so granted, I mean, you could see some things change. You could see stuff where, even on the other foot, where if Whittingham stays, there might be some guys that sit back and say, well, we were expecting this. Let's maybe look at some different stuff here, right? So yeah, it's a really interesting and delicate time. And then you add into the mix that, Utah still has not announced an OC yet. Just the fact that they've got 20 guys committed to them right now, is a pretty big deal. I mean, they had 3 guys pop within the last couple hours today. And then like you mentioned, that kicker last week, which, I grew up, I went to Murray High, so I'm partial to the kid, but anytime a kid can kick a 63-yard field goal and, pretty much still give you about 12 to 15 yards to spare. And the rate that kid kicks balls out of the end zone, it sounds crazy that I'm glowing about the kicker right now, as opposed to some of the other ones that just committed, right? But I mean,
well,
kicker's such a big deal.
If this year's anything to go by, Utah needs a good kicker, right? I mean,
100%.
That
100%,
offensive,
yeah. Go ahead.
That offensive coordinator question is the one that, like, you got to know what's happening with Kyle Whittingham. I think that they're not unrelated, right? Coach Witt deciding his future is going to go hand in hand with what, hiring someone to come into a program. There's either going to be that stability or not. Some people might think that stability is appealing. Some people might not think it's appealing because of the reputation, right or wrong, that Kyle Whittingham has when it comes to offense. And the name that everyone is so focused on right now is the Washington State offensive coordinator, Ben Arbuckle, who's also getting a lot of attention and allegedly a pretty attractive offer from the University of Oklahoma. So what do you think is going to happen here?
Oh, man. It's been crickets today, after some craziness back and forth over the weekend. What I've been hearing, so early last week, it sounded like Utah was pretty confident in it. And then Oklahoma came back with a bigger offer. Towards about game time, I started hearing that, Utah had upped it, and there were some more appealing things with Utah as well that, people were starting to expect it, Anytime you're in the mix with a team like Oklahoma, you don't count it out until the ink's signed. I mean, until the ink's dry, right? And so it's been a crazy back and forth. I've even been going back and forth with my Oklahoma guys, and they don't know what to think right now. I mean, the one big thing that they feel like is in Oklahoma's favor is that his wife grew up really close to that area, to Norman, and so that could be a big benefit for them. It sounds like she's been wanting him to get back in that area when he has the opportunity. But then you sit back and you take a look at it also, and both teams can pay him, right? So throw that out the window. He's going into this and he's looking at this saying,
well, hold on. I don't. Yeah. When you say both teams can pay him, Oklahoma's money and Utah's money has never been the same, ever. Mm-hmm. Is it now?
Andy Ludwig was the second highest paid offense coordinator in the country this year at $1.8 million. So yeah, Utah can compete with that. There's no question on that, right? So the other stuff that he's got to weigh out is, okay, well, Venerable, he's starting to get on the hot seat, right? So if they have one more bad year, is he gone? Could he just be there one more year, and then is he trying to figure out all this stuff all over again, right? Whether Kyle does stay one more year or if it kicks into Morgan Scalley, I mean, he's looking at a 3 to 5 year grace period and runway almost, with the University of Utah. On top of that, you got to sit back and you got to take a look at it and say, okay, he runs a spread offense that's got some modified air raid elements to it. Okay. Is that going to set him up for better success in the Big 12, or is that going to set him up for better success in the SEC? So those are all things that he's got to weigh out. It's just the fact that his wife wanting to be closer to Oklahoma the last few years and everything, with that being appealing, is that going to be something that can win out, over the soon-to-be stability of something like Utah? So it's an interesting situation right now. Utah's been confident, but Oklahoma's been confident too. So it's been fun trying to get info out of it.
The other reason why Utah fans are so enamored with this name potentially landing at Utah is because it feels like it would increase the likelihood that one of the hottest free agent quarterbacks, and yes, I'm going to call him that because that's what transfers are, John Mateer is expected probably to move on from Washington State. He's going to have offers. I just got a text message from someone who told me that he's got $1.5 million offer on the table currently, which that number will probably go up depending on the needs of some of the blue blood programs around the country. And if Arbuckle comes, it would make it, stand to reason that it'd be more likely that Mateer would consider a place like Utah. Do you believe those guys are a package deal, whoever lands them?
It's the stuff with the transfer portal stuff is so crazy nowadays, right? Because it's like you look at that and you ask me that, and you sit back and say, okay, well, tampering, it's blatant tampering. It goes around everywhere nowadays, right? And teams do it the right, proper way with the back channels and so on. So it's crazy to even sit back and talk about that and say, would they be a package deal? But yeah. I mean, I don't see any reason Mateer would stay at Washington State without his OC when, those two are the two that have just been successful together and been feeding off each other. Mateer started the season off slow. He wasn't doing the best, and then something clicked, and it was something that, is the sign of a good offensive coordinator. Arbuckle ended up simplifying the offense for him and, just catering it towards his strengths, and then he blew up and they took off, and so, yeah, those two, I would highly expect those two to be a package deal, whether it's Utah eventually, whether it's Oklahoma eventually. I really don't see those two separating. The other thing I've heard too, and I won't mention the name on it for now, but I have heard that if Arbuckle comes to Utah, that you're looking at one other person coming as well, potentially. So, just a lot of moving pieces right now.
Well, it'll be really fascinating to see how that all works out as far as the timeline on all this, because again, 2 days from now, you're announcing your signing class. And even though those young players are being told, like, hey, you're going to start your career with Kyle Whittingham, you might not finish your career with Kyle Whittingham, it feels like for a coordinator hire, for coaches who are going to come in, for transfer players who are going to come in who don't have like a full 5 years to see how it all plays out, it feels like we need to get an answer on Kyle Whittingham's future in the next, I would say hours, not days. Do you anticipate some clarity there in the immediate future?
I think we're going to hear something within today or tomorrow. It's and I kind of get the sense that, I've had people tell me both sides, right? But just with some of the things that I've seen, just trying to add everything up, I do think it's going to be Morgan. But Kyle surprised a lot of people in the past. Like I've mentioned, there's been at least two other times where, he was going to retire and then decided against it. So, the last time we talked to, I think the other thing I mentioned as well, that just kind of plays into this really interesting is there's going to be offensive coordinators that Utah's talking to that want to coach with Scally that don't necessarily want to coach with Whittingham, and so that's a unique element to it where this needs to get sorted out so that, so that all those decisions can be made and Utah's off and running for even signing day, but at the same time too, it's getting up to the wire. Who knows if that can get done before signing day?
Well, we'll be talking to you again very soon as this signing class comes in. And of course we get some clarity on what happens with the coaching staff and the offensive coordinator. Appreciate the info and the time today. Thanks, dude.
Appreciate it. Thanks, OC.
Alex Markham, Utah Insider over at Rivals. Big 12 at noon is always brought to you by our friends over at Mountain Land Supply, mountainlandsupply.com. Any of your home improvement projects, you need to check out Mountain Land Supply. So, look, there are a lot of moving parts to this. We'll discuss some of that in our next segment. I also want to talk about the rash of fights that happened over rivalry weekend. There's going to be one big change that comes to college football because of what you saw this weekend, and it's going to be the dumbest thing you've ever seen. We'll discuss it in 3 minutes on the Sean O'Connell Show. ESPN 792 on FM, part of the Utah ESPN radio network. Part of the Utah ESPN radio network, and you ready for conspiracy theories? You ready to read the tea leaves here? All right, I told you at the beginning of the show, don't get overly excited about this Ben Arbuckle conversation. Big thanks to Alex Markham for joining me. Look, there's a couple things that you have to consider with Ben Arbuckle being given options at Oklahoma, all right? I don't think he makes his decision completely independent of what he thinks John Mateer wants to do. I'm sure they've had a conversation about that. It feels a lot more likely that John Mateer could be convinced with some NIL funds to transfer to a place like Oklahoma that has produced Heisman Trophy winners, that has produced national champions, that has produced stuff on the elite quarterback level that he probably sees himself eventually winning, right? That's not to besmirch Utah or its quarterback abilities. There's been some great ones here. There's been more great ones at Oklahoma. That's just factual, unfortunately. So if you're a quarterback and if you're a passing game-oriented coordinator, Oklahoma is a place that makes more sense probably intuitively to you than Utah does. That's something that you have to pay attention to. Also, Oklahoma can pay more. It just can. Like, I know that Utah paid Andy Ludwig very handsomely, and they had to because he was being courted by Notre Dame. He decided not to leave for Notre Dame to stay at Utah, and so you're going to get compensated for that. But Oklahoma has more money in the football program than Utah does. Oklahoma has more money on the NIL front, more money on the coaching salary front, more money on the television revenue distribution front, more money on the ticket sales front, more money on the apparel sales front. They have more money than Utah does, period. So, yes, Brent Venables would be, I think, a scarier coach to go work for because of less security there. But beyond that, they have more money. So if it comes down to who's offering the most, Oklahoma can reach into a deeper bag than Utah can. And that matters a lot. And that matters especially on the player front.
Yeah, and we just heard Alex say that. He was the second highest paid coordinator in the nation.
I would be shocked. And I mean, I would be blown away if Utah offers whoever replaces Andy Ludwig as the permanent offensive coordinator the same salary that Andy Ludwig was getting. That's just not how it works.
No.
Like, Morgan Scalley, when he takes over for Kyle Whittingham, is not going to get Coach Witt's same salary. You don't take over as the unproven guy at this place for the same salary as the guy who helped you win a Sugar Bowl, helped you win two Pac-12 championships. Like, you don't get that. Unfortunately, you don't. Utah is not offering $1.8 million to the new offensive coordinator. They're just not doing that.
Yeah. And
now, the other thing about it is, and someone on the text line brought this in, and I think it was very, very astute observation, that Arbuckle is a sexy name and the Mateer thing is very attractive, but it's actually philosophically a very, very different approach to offense, certainly than Kyle Whittingham has ever adopted. But I also don't know why people think Morgan Scalley is going to be like opposite of Kyle Whittingham. He's just not. Like, is he going to be more open to opening the playbook up and throwing the ball all over the yard than Kyle Whittingham? Probably. But is he just going to reject what has made the teams that he has coached on and played on successful? No, he's not. He's not going to just pretend that didn't work completely. There's another thing here that we have to talk about, and shout out to you, Zach, and shout out to whoever brought it in on the text line as well. Coaches and players are linked. You commit to play for a coach. When a coach recruits you, he tells you his plans, whether he's telling you the full truth or whether he gives you the entire story about, how long he's going to be in a certain place. That's always debatable. But Utah just flipped a quarterback recruit named Jamarian Ficklin from Muskogee, Oklahoma, 6'2", 190-pound quarterback. Now, this is a 3-star guy. Great, wonderful, love to see it. The reason I'm bringing it up to you now, instead of in 2 days when this class gets put together officially, is because this young man was previously committed to play at Texas State University. Now, Utah and Texas State don't always have a lot of cross-pollination on who they're recruiting. This guy committed to go play for someone named Mac Leftwich, who we put on our short list of replacement offensive coordinators. Mac Leftwich and his style of offensive play is a lot more contiguous. There's a lot more continuity with the way that he calls his offense than the way that Ben Arbuckle calls his offense in terms of what Utah has done previously and in terms of what Utah feels like their offensive personnel might fit with. So could be a coincidence that this quarterback who was previously committed to play at Texas State has now decided he wants to be at Utah, or it could be that the coach he committed to play for at Texas State said, well, I'm going to be at Utah, so just come with me to Utah.
Pull another Lincoln Riley, Caleb Williams.
Mac Leftwich was on the short list of candidates. Brennan Marion was my number one guy.
Yeah.
It sounds like, he might be headed more East Coast. We'll see how it all plays out. The coaching carousel on the head coaching front and on the coordinator front is going to be spinning pretty aggressively, but we have to wait, which is unfortunate because of the way that these recruiting windows open up. We have to wait and see how things shake out in the college football playoff rankings for some of these teams.
Yeah.
And the way that the conference championship games play out, that's going to matter for like a decision that, I don't know, Ohio State might make on Ryan Day one way or another after the disastrous weekend.
God, that made me so mad as an Ohio State fan.
And by the way, this brings me to what I was teasing heading into the break before the Jamarian Ficklin thing really got serious for me. We saw fights in, Texas and Texas A&M tried to fight. You saw Michigan and Ohio State fighting, and
Police had to get involved.
the police, that was terrible.
That was.
Pepper spraying people on a football field makes it worse. All right? What you just did was made it worse. We have seen 1,000 of these post-game brawls where everyone's suited up still.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens? Push, 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 push. Bunch of curse words being thrown around. A couple people get knocked off their feet. Maybe a broken hand because some moron punches somebody else in the helmet. And, in a worst-case scenario, and I think a worst-case scenario actually did unfold here, somebody might, get knocked unconscious by being thrown on the back of their head or something.
Yeah.
But pepper spraying a bunch of college football athletes and turning this into an international incident, what usually happens is these things flame out after 60 seconds or so.
Mm-hmm.
You got to let that happen. Now, BYU and Memphis had kind of an extension of that craziness in the bowl game they played several years ago, and it can get ugly, but it all comes down to the thing where you can't let somebody plant a flag on your field. And that's why the fight was happening.
We saw the same thing with Arizona and Arizona State, and then UNC and South Carolina.
So what's going to happen, the change that's coming in college football, especially for these rivalry games and probably for every game, is you're going to have a bunch of state troopers standing around the midfield logo. And you're probably going to have a situation in rivalry games where flags, like school flags, are not allowed. And it's going to be super dumb when they make that rule change. But for the avoidance of these little kerfuffles post-game, some conference or some university president is going to propose a rule change where, don't let them bring the flags anymore. Don't let them bring their
pitchfork,
their giant Ohio State flag or their giant big block M. We don't want to see that anymore. And it's going to be silly. By the way, watching any athlete who is not a combat sports athlete try to fight is one of the funniest things you can find.
I agree.
Nobody knows how to fight. None of these, college football players are big, strong, scary dudes. You know what they're not, though? They're not good fighters. They're not. NFL football players, not good fighters. NBA players, even worse. Terrible fighters. Soccer players, the worst types of fighters. Baseball players, except for Nolan Ryan, none of them know how to fight.
Yeah.
All right? They can't bleeping fight. And so when they're running around and they're like shoving into each other and they're throwing punches at dudes with helmets on, and the cops are like, oh my gosh, we got to stop this. It's about to be a riot. And they start pepper spraying. It's like, guys,
Come on now.
Just watch them. They can't fight. They're gonna like fizzle out after 30 seconds because their adrenaline's all up. They're gonna gas themselves out. The coaches are gonna come in, yell at them, curse at them, push them backwards. Game over.
Yeah.
The
exactly.
fights, man, and the fact that those highlights get played over and over and over and over again, and the reaction to them is like, oh, this is assault. This is crazy. Like, just please, everybody relax. None of them know how to fight, and they're wearing protective equipment.
Pads,
they're fine.
Helmets, leg pads.
And by the way, if you bust your hand punching someone in the helmet, you deserve it. You deserve to have a broken hand.
Yep.
Because you're dumb.
Hey, you should just offer, with your background in fighting, you should just offer some classes for athletes.
Dude, I put this out. I think that, like when Morgan Scalley takes over at the University of Utah, right? Here's my proposal.
Okay, where's your proposal?
In order to avoid these post-game brawl situations, what we're going to do is go up there and we're going to teach wrestling, like just a good, solid ankle pick or a double leg or a head inside single or whatever, because everybody who thinks they know how to street fight immediately loses their plot. They go completely panic-stricken. They don't know what's happening as soon as they get put on the ground. So all you got to do is teach these players rudimentary wrestling. Someone comes up, wants to fight him, wants to shove him, wants to smack him in the helmet. Fine. Change levels, drop down, head inside single, dump them on their butt. Fight's over. You're standing over them. You can say what you want. You can do what you want. You can hold them down. Takes very little effort to hold them down at that point. And now, fight's avoided.
Yep.
Everyone's good.
I agree.
So that's what we're going to do. We're going to propose that, and I'll only charge, I don't know, like $50,000 per session.
Just get an NIL deal with everybody.
You know, it's the fights in the rivalry games were some of the silliest things I've seen. And the reaction that officials have to have and cops have to have and conferences have to have with their reprimands and their finger shaking and all that.
We saw Ohio State, Michigan, what year?
I do feel like so people like to assign the blame, and you're wrong if you're you want to fight somebody for planting the flag. Where's that fight when you're in the game? Why aren't you competing harder in the game? Guys, they're competing as hard as they can in the game, all right? Sometimes it just doesn't go your way. But there's a matter of honor at stake for these young men where you just cannot let Michigan plant the flag on your field. You can't let it happen. You're forced to fight. It's like if you're out with your significant other, right? If you're a man, you're out with your significant other, and somebody says or does something that is completely unacceptable to your wife. Like if somebody, I am so far away from being confrontational in public because I know how difficult it is to fight. I know how dangerous it is to fight. I've done it professionally. So I don't want to like lose my teeth in a street fight. I'm completely uninterested in anything, any altercation on the street. People have weapons, people have friends, like all that stuff, right? But if someone like, I don't know, puts their hands on your wife, you have to do something. You can't just be like, oh, okay, bye, we're just going to go over here. You have to do something. It's like a matter of honor for these young men. So the coaching staff of Michigan, the coaching staff of the team that is trying to plant the flag is the one that needs to be the ones regulating this. Like, hey, win with a little bit of class, talk your talk, tell them, but like don't do the thing where they have to defend their field, where they have to be put in a position where it's like, well, if I let them do that, then I'm a you-know-what. If I let that guy do that, then he's asserting his dominance over me yet again for the photos and for the reputation of my university. You can't make it a matter of honor with these guys because then they're forced into this situation.
Right, and we saw, was it Baker Mayfield's senior year when he planted the flag on the O in Oklahoma, or I guess they're playing Ohio State because they're at Ohio State. But when he's playing for Oklahoma, he planted a flag as well.
See, you can't do that.
No, it's disrespectful to the team.
And then if you are on the team that is being disrespected, you have to do something.
It's going to make you mad.
You have to do it. But it's not just it doesn't just make you mad. If you don't do something, then it's demeaning to you, right? And now it's like, oh my gosh. Now the fan base hates me. Now my own coaching staff questions my toughness. Now like my older brother who played for this same university talks trash at Thanksgiving because I didn't go out there and defend the logo. And it's the silliest thing in the world, but it's real. It's out there. And these guys, it's like this is the microcosm that they live in. It's like if someone comes into your house and just while you're trying to watch TV, somebody comes into your house and starts trashing your living room. You can't just let them do it.
Just a random stranger?
That's what it is. It's your neighbor that you kind of don't like who just comes into your house and starts like pouring paint on your rug. You're like, whoa, 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 whoa. You can't just let them do it.
Yeah. And then you're in the moments where you're like, oh, I wish I did something, or like, oh, I should have said this, and then you just laugh about it later. You know? You ever that happen to you?
No, no.
Really?
No, because I'm the idiot who says something. I'm not the one who goes afterwards. I wish I would have said something. I'm an idiot who says stuff.
That's true.
Anyway, the fights, they're so innocuous at the end of the day. It's not something that you have to start pepper spraying people over.
No, I agree for sure.
Anyway.
You like seeing fights in football games sometimes, though.
No, I don't like seeing fights in football games. I like seeing fights in hockey games because it's part of the sports culture.
True.
Fights in football games, they're all terrible. Like shoving and stuff, that's fine. Mm-hmm. Actual fights where guys are running around swinging helmets and those are dumb. They're not part of the culture. They're not part of. If you want to shove the guy at the bottom of the pile, if you want to do that in the Notre Dame USC game, dude just dropped the hammer. Like from the USC guy was on the ground. I think it was a D lineman from Notre Dame. Mm-hmm. Just like from a standing position, just the atom bomb punch to the head. Again, while he's wearing a helmet. That's dumb.
That is dumb and dangerous.
If you want to fight, there's an arena for that. It's
True.
Not on a college football field. And everyone overreacts to it. Everyone goes bananas over it. And now the cops get involved, and then the pepper spray comes out. Mm-hmm. Ugh. And you know what comes out after pepper spray? Tasers. You don't want a situation where people start getting tased.
You don't want to be electrocuted.
All right, we got to take a break. Bad news on the injury front for one of the all-time greats from the local universities here in our great state of Utah. We'll tell you about the injury and who's affected. Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM, part of the Utah ESPN Radio Network. career as the Swiss Army knife of the NFL. I shouldn't call it unlikely, actually, because we knew when he was at BYU that he was one of the great athletes that had ever come through the school. And in the NFL, he has been just a really interesting, dynamic kind of weapon to use however that coaching staff wants to use him. But Taysom Hill will miss the rest of this season with a torn ACL. That's a bummer. He's had a great career. It looked like it was kind of a helmet on the knee situation. Bent his knee backward, and it was not looking good on field after the game, and the MRIs confirmed that Taysom Hill, former BYU Cougar, longtime member of that New Orleans Saints team, and one of the more versatile players in all of NFL football, is out for the rest of the year. That stinks. How old is Taysom now? 34 years old. So 34 years old in his 8th season, he'll rehab, he'll come back, but someone who relies so much on his athleticism, his power, his explosiveness to create his game, that's going to be a tough injury to come back from at that age. So wishing him well. Just a quick little segment there on the Sean O'Connell Show update on NFL football. Jeff Schwartz will join us tomorrow. We'll dive deeper into the NFL situation after Monday Night Football completes tonight. Want to remind you, ESPN 700 Rocky Mountain Chevy dealers are inviting you to help those at the road home this holiday season with blankets, coats, shoes, hats, gloves, anything useful in this cold weather. Drop off donations at a Rocky Mountain Chevy dealer. Visit ESPN700sports.com for all the dealer locations. Spread the warmth and help others find their way home with the road home and the Rocky Mountain Chevy dealers. Coats, hats, gloves, shoes, anything useful for the cold. All right, Andrea Urban's going to join us on the other side. We'll talk about the season coming to a close for both Utah and the regular season coming to a close for BYU. 10 wins, but still no trip to the conference championship game. Tough thing to process for that fan base. We'll get into it on the Sean O'Connell Show. ESPN 700, 92.1 FM, part of the Utah ESPN Radio Network. Andrea, welcome to the show. How are you?
Sean, hello. I'm so good. My mom's in town visiting, and I said, I bet money Sean's going to call me the hardest worker in Utah. So I won $5 today. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
I hope so. Anytime you want to bet on things I'm going to say, just tell me. You got to split the profits with me, but I'll say whatever you need. I'm shameless in that front.
Thank you. That's what a real friend does. I appreciate it, my friend.
All right. So I want to talk about a little post-mortem here on a Utah football season that, they finished 5-7, get the win to kind of close it out, it's a feel-good. It's like a sentimental win. It's nice to see the seniors go off with a victory after all they've done for this program. Unfortunately, that's all it's worth. But, from a human interest standpoint, knowing
I was sitting by my TV because I was anchoring on Fox 13 that night. So I was so excited to read the highlights because I'm like, this is going to be a winning game. And for Luke Batari to step up after 1, 2, 3 quarterbacks are going down, he deserved to find the end zone on that touchdown reception, as well as 2 pick sixes. Like, we talk a lot about Utah continuing that streak and keeping it alive, and Lander Barton was able to do that, but then not only once this season, then twice to end the game, and that just makes sense because what has been, and they did, and you know what? That's a high note, and I count it as a success because Utah has never lost 8 straight. They've never lost 8 straight, and that stat still stays true.
So the big picture questions still remain for Utah, whether or not Kyle Whittingham is going to continue coaching, and, of course, who will be the offensive coordinator moving forward. I'm reading some of the tea leaves with some things that are happening right now on that front, and I think we'll get an announcement sooner than later. I think you need one because of the recruiting picture. But look, you've been around this program and you've been covering it for long enough to know the ebbs and flows of Kyle Whittingham, how he communicates, the mood, the culture, all that stuff. Do you have a sense? Do you have any intuition telling you what the announcement is going to be whenever it is made?
Oh, man. So Kyle keeps saying, I'm going to do whatever is best for the program and what my family and I talk about. And, and I do believe his family is going to sit with him and talk this out. I don't want Kyle to go after 20 seasons of a ride in building this program and taking it to a national stage and end on this note. But if there's some sort of capacity where he could still stay involved in the Utah football program, but maybe pass the torch on, I see that vision and possibility as well. So what I'm thinking is coming is, hey, I'm resigning or, retiring as head coach, but I'm not going too far. I'm still going to, instill what I've instilled in this program, but in this new role. I'm not even quite sure what that is, but this is just how I'm envisioning it. Like, as a kid growing up, if you watch Utah football, it's almost like and I'm only going to say this because I went to Michigan State, but like playing for like a Tom Izzo. It's like, okay, Michigan State, Tom Izzo, when I grow up, I'm going to play for him. And I think that that's the connection of Kyle Whittingham and Utah football. And so if you take him away completely, it's almost like an identity shift. And maybe they need that. But, man, a lot went wrong this season, injuries and so many things that hindered the team that you can't just say it's Kyle Whittingham's fault. There was so many other factors. So people who are calling for his head, it just doesn't make sense to me because this is the guy that, we were praising the ground he walked on a couple of seasons ago. And I know that's how sports works, but in the perfect world, I'd like to still see Kyle Whittingham around the program.
Yeah, I think the only way we see him around the program is if he is the head coach. I don't like maybe he would circle back into the orbit in a few years to, do the thing where he's, I don't know, advisor to whatever, but I don't think that he's around unless he's the head coach. Cuz how do you like it's run your way every day, like down to the most minute detail, and then you're still around but you don't have that control. I don't know if Coach Whittingham would deal with that. But you know what? I've been surprised by everything that's happened there the last 2 years. So we'll see. Andrew Urban's my guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show. Look, BYU still has at least one more game. They're going to play the bowl game, and I ran into someone on the staff yesterday, and we were talking about where that is going to be. And, BYU is a very attractive bowl team for all these non-playoff bowls because the fans show up and there's a ton of support, not only from folks who will travel from Utah and from Provo, but of course the LDS community is everywhere. So I'm hearing like Pop-Tarts Bowl, Alamo Bowl has options, all that kind of thing.
Yep.
But I guess my question for you is, for a fan base and a program that at least, at the halfway point of the season was like, oh, you know what? Never mind. It's championship or bust. Has has a record that is good enough to put them in the championship, but they lose out on technicalities and tiebreakers. What's the right way to process this?
Yeah. I was at the BYU Houston game on Saturday night, and when halftime hit and the Iowa State score was final, I gotta say the energy in that entire stadium, from the fan base to the sideline, and I get to walk the sideline too because I'm down there, and I'm hearing the players, hey, we still have something to fight for here. Let's send the seniors out on a high note. Let's go. And they did, and I'm happy for them because that's a 10-win season, and a lot of these seniors have been a part of 10-win seasons with this BYU program, so that's great. That is a high note. I support that, but wow, it's so crazy when you can really feel thousands and thousands of people's energy all in one space, knowing that essentially your dreams that you had all season long after a 9-0 start for the first time, I believe, since 2008 gets crushed. And yeah, that is tough. But you know what I want to see in a bowl game is I want to see Colorado, BYU, as almost like a third place game of the Big 12 in a bowl game. I know it doesn't mean anything, but man, oh man, would that sell tickets beyond the BYU fan base. You've got the Deion Sanders and company in town or wherever, and I think that would be an awesome matchup. But I'm really proud of what BYU accomplished when they didn't know their starting quarterback going into the season, and all of us were saying, oh man, this BYU-Utah rivalry, Utah's gonna roll over them, and then you've got BYU to, and I'm not even going back to that game specifically, but just for BYU to have the season that they had, they truly defied the odds.
They really did, and it's been an incredible season. And the fact that you pull up today, if you right now on ESPN, you pull up the Big 12 conference standings, and BYU is second in the conference standings, but lost out on the tiebreakers, and it's just like, oh, it's really unfortunate. I love the idea of a Colorado BYU bowl game. I was hoping that we would get a Colorado BYU conference championship game for all the obvious reasons, but also just like the BYU reputation of being like, Wonder Bread and very vanilla and just corny versus a team that is all swagger and I don't know what else they can, that's like, it's just like the polar opposites. At least in the way the country views them. But it would be a great game, and it's one we still might get. I guess the Alamo Bowl could potentially make that happen. I think the Alamo Bowl was the one that could potentially make it happen. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Big picture, and you kind of touched on this with Utah and BYU and expectations, and one exceeding expectations, one falling well short of expectations.
Mm-hmm.
BYU has everything humming right now. They're going to bring Jake Retzlaff back, okay? They've got their quarterback situation pretty well sorted. They have a pretty talented team that doesn't lose a lot from a graduation standpoint. And recruiting is going as well as it ever goes at a place like BYU, which is very, very tough to recruit to.
Yeah.
Can this season help to flip the dynamic where now BYU is in the driver's seat again? From a local recruiting standpoint, from a local power ranking standpoint, is one bad season for Utah, one really bad season for Utah enough to undermine, the base that was built for so long?
I know. That's what's so crazy in all of this is I just sit back and look at the Utah football program and everyone who's maybe, going to jump ship. And I'm like, what happened to this family on three that we've been driven by with every story that I've done and every Rose Bowl game that I've covered. It's we are here for each other, and it really burns me to the core that it could really just crumble after one season. I'm not sure. I'm really not sure there because I'm kind of just waiting for the coaching announcement to fall before I can even be like, okay, things are going to get back on track or things are, going to have to rebuild or so on. But as for BYU, talking to Kalani Sitake after that game on Saturday night at 1 a.m., he was so confident that we are rolling on from this. Think of what we could do with the returners that we've got. The seniors are going to get to play one more game. And here's one thing I will say, Sean, and I know Utah had an up and down season, but every single BYU game that I went to, win or lose, they always talked about how much they loved each other. And there was a special moment two or three games ago. It was a BYU home game, and Kalani left the press conference and crossed paths with Tyler Batty. And we all as media got to see this, and they can attest to it as well. Kalani and Tyler had this moment where he was like, I love you, man. And Tyler teared up and he's like, I love you, coach. And it was real. And it just shows that when Jake Retzloff talks about defense, offense, special teams, and all three phases working together, he really genuinely means he's giving props to offense, defense, and special teams. And that's what I want to see come back to Utah is we're not playing for the individual. We're not playing for the NIL. We're not playing for the status on Instagram or so on and so forth. But we are really, truly playing for each other. And at a school like BYU, you really need that because of the faith, led university. And so I really do believe that BYU can build a strong future moving forward, because listen to Kalani talk after that game. And if you haven't, I'm sure it's on YouTube somewhere. He was like, oh, we're just getting started.
Andrea Urban for another couple of minutes here on the Sean O'Connell Show. Utah BYU seasons wrapped up. BYU will play a bowl game, but no conference championship appearance for them. And nobody does more work driving to Logan and covering the Aggies than you do. And look, they've got a big decision to make, and I don't think it exists in a vacuum. I mean, obviously Jay Hill is a very, very appealing candidate for the folks up there in Logan. If that happens, now suddenly all that consistency and continuity on Kalani's staff gets interrupted, because if Jay gets that job, he's probably taking half the staff with him. What's your read on what's happening in Logan?
Yeah, I first I want to say I feel awful for the situation that Nate Dreiling was put in. He was hired to be a defensive coordinator, and he was a head coach within seconds. And for them to have the monstrous wins that they had kind of to close out the Mountain West, other than falling short this last week, but good for them. Good for them to deliver some of those dominant wins. That makes me happy. I don't know. I'm not, that close with Jay Hill. I've covered him for years at Weber State and at BYU as well, and he always says hello. But I want to think that he's got a great gig at BYU. He's a defensive-minded guy, defense first. It's all he's really ever wanted was to step up into a Power 5 conference. I know it's a head coaching role, but we've seen what Jay Hill can do at the head coaching job. So I almost think that there are some, and I think Jay's perfect for the job, but in Utah State's, just drama that they've been through, maybe they can go on an outside, nationwide search, find someone who is from a Power 5, bring them into Logan, and maybe just keep building BYU. That's how I'm seeing it, but also I'm not Jay Hill's family who's like, hey, this is a head coaching job. I just think Logan and Utah State needs a lot of work, and is Jay Hill ready to take on every single step of that when he just built this BYU defense into essentially the powerhouse that it was this season. So I think he's right for the job, but my heart says that he stays in Provo. And you might be laughing at me in a couple weeks from now. So.
No, you know what? I actually have the same sense of things. And not from talking to Jay, but talking to people around that program. I think, there's appealing jobs, and a head coaching job is appealing because it's a step up, but it's not automatically more appealing than a great job at Utah or a great job at BYU as kind of like, the second in charge. To be a coordinator who's having a lot of success and is helping to build something, that even though Utah fans don't want to hear it, it's pretty special what happened down there at BYU this year.
Yeah.
It just is. And the vibe on that team with the talent they have, by the way, that linebacking core that Jay Hill has all gets to come back, right? And the talent, the most talented portions of that defense, with the exception of the aforementioned Tyler Batty, pretty much everybody's back. So, yes, you could probably, make a little bit more money at Utah State. The guy is not he's not in this strictly for the money. And if you continue to have success building BYU and building a BYU defense, there are more appealing jobs out there than Utah State that will eventually call and say, hey, Jay Hill, we saw what you did at Weber. You've been doing a great job at Utah or at BYU these last couple of years.
Yep.
Do you want to come be the head coach at the University of Arizona, which is a better job? It just is. Like Utah State has some ugly situations. They got some lawsuits. That's going to be circling around the athletic department for years, Andrea.
Yes, and that's exactly what I'm thinking. Everyone's, why wouldn't Jay? My thing is why would Jay? And that is not. I'm going to go up to Logan and I'm going to cover that team and I'm going to give them love. So I want success for them. I really do, but I just don't see this specifically.
All right, what are the Andrea Urban duties for this week?
Well, guess what? I'm actually off the next couple of days hanging out with my mom.
That's not true. You don't take days off. That's a lie.
My mom and I are going to go to the hockey game tonight as fans, which is very exciting. I will have a little morning shoot tomorrow with Utah Hockey Club, but then the rest of the week we're going to, take action on some late Black Friday sales. So.
All right, well, enjoy that. Appreciate your time always on the show here. Tell your mom we said hi, and thank you.
Absolutely. Yes, she's here on the side really enjoying this conversation. So you got a new fan, that's for sure. Thanks, Sean.
Andrea Urban, hardest working woman in sports, hardest working person in the Utah sports sphere. Nobody is covering stuff like Andrea, and she does a great job on all of it. All right, Sean O'Connell Show continues here on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. I want to dive back into the conversation we started the show with. Utah football finishes its season with a win. That's great. That's wonderful. It doesn't ultimately mean all that much because the bigger picture questions still need to be answered. Who will be the offensive coordinator at Utah moving forward? Who will be the head coach? And when do we find out? It is the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM, part of the Utah ESPN Radio Network. 8-game losing streak. And look, the vibes were about as good as they can be for a team that had such a rough year after that victory in Orlando. And then you turn the page to the bigger picture questions. There's talent on this roster. Talent has not been a problem. Luck with injuries, or maybe you're in the camp of like injuries are more of a controllable thing, and it's not just luck. Injuries have been devastating for the team these past couple of years. I was alongside everybody about halfway through that losing streak, wondering if the culture of Utah football was going to be able to survive. And they had their players-only meeting. They had their conversations with one another that they needed to have. After Mekhi Bernard spoke to the media and said, we know what it is, we have to fix it, they did enough culturally to fix it. Now, you still didn't win football games until this last week of the season, but the effort was better, the attitude was better, the body language was better. Ultimately, that doesn't pay anybody's bills. You can't be a body language and attitude football team. You have to be a wins and losses football team. Utah has to find ways to win. They have made some announcements today, flipped a couple of guys, offensive recruits that are coming to the University of Utah, at least if they stay consistent with their plan. And that signing period opens in 2 days, by the way. I told you that you needed to have an offensive coordinator announced before that happens. I still anticipate that will be the case. Ben Arbuckle is the name that was circulating pretty aggressively over the weekend for the University of Utah. A lot of appeal comes there because he had big passing numbers especially, and the tendency is to want to overcompensate away from the thing that hurt you this year. Bad passing offense for Utah. And you want to see this thing balanced out. You want to see the quarterback situation look better. Well, Ben Arbuckle could potentially come with John Mateer. The more I think about it, the more I vocalize it, the less likely it feels that both of those guys end up in Salt Lake City. I just don't see it happening. I think it would be prohibitively expensive to try and get both of them to come to Salt Lake City and be a foundational duo for the offense moving forward. We still also don't know if Kyle Whittingham is if he's going to continue. Not one that says he needs to rush his decision because he's earned the time, he's earned the right as the best coach in this program's history, as a 20-year staple. He's earned the right to do what he wants to do. I'm not trying to run Kyle Whittingham off into retirement. I actually don't want to see him retire just yet. I think, he's an energetic enough guy. I don't think he's completely lost the locker room, although that was talked about this year as well. He did say, though, I will make the decision that's in the best interest of the Utah football team, not the best interest of myself. And at least outside looking in, what's in the best interest of this football team is clarity in the next day and a half. I mean, we're halfway through Monday. Wednesday is when you have to start signing these high school recruits. And even if they have a good sense of what's happening moving forward in terms of, Morgan Scalley will be my head coach before my career here is done, you still need to know who the offensive coordinator is going to be. If that's someone who wants to come coach under Kyle Whittingham, awesome. You're set. If it's someone who only wants to coach with Morgan Scalley, now you definitely need clarity on this situation. Because I know Utah's going to pay whoever it is probably at least double what they're already getting paid, I don't think there's a lot of people out there who are going, well, I don't want to be on Kyle Whittingham's staff. All of us who know everything that happened, or all of us who observed everything that happened with that stretch of 8 coordinators in 8 years, have a tendency to be like, well, nobody wants to work with Kyle Whittingham. That's not true. People want to work with Kyle Whittingham. People want to work at the University of Utah. People aren't looking at one bad season for the Utes and saying, I don't want to have anything to do with that program because Kyle Whittingham is still in charge. That's just not true. If anyone has told you that, they are lying. even when it was not going well, even when you were hiring a new offensive coordinator every single year, there were still people, highly thought of people, that wanted to come work with Kyle Whittingham. Dennis Erickson still wanted to do it. Norm Chow still wanted to do it. Dave Schramm still wanted to do it. Andy Ludwig, who had already worked with him, wanted to come back and do it again, and did so very successfully. And I think if you zoom out from this 2024 season, you might think, you know what? Andy Ludwig probably should have been kept around. That wasn't the fix that people thought it was going to be. Andy Ludwig was not the problem that people thought he was. And if he wanted to move off and do his own thing and retire, fine. When it's your time, it's your time. But I think there's more to it than that. And I think that that's something that Utah football potentially regrets, at least in the micro, on the 2024 season front. Yeah. So now the question is, the offensive coordinator being announced, Kyle Whittingham making a decision about his long-term future, his short-term future. Which of those two things happen? Because they're not mutually exclusive. They're very tied together. One being announced with the other would make sense, right? If you call an emergency press conference tomorrow
or today
and you say that Ben Arbuckle is your new offensive coordinator and Kyle Whittingham is deciding to retire, or vice versa. Mm-hmm. Ben Arbuckle is your offensive coordinator and he's here to work for Kyle Whittingham. Then people are like, all right, cool. Now you have Coach Witt and a promising young offensive coordinator. I don't know how much that gels together. I don't know if Kyle Whittingham's old school mentality and a 29-year-old offensive coordinator is the natural fit. But, look, there's young guys on the staff. There's always been young guys on the staff. And it wasn't all that long ago that Kyle Whittingham hired the youngest offensive coordinator in the history of Division I football when he gave Brian Johnson that opportunity as like a 23-year-old.
Yeah, now he's one of the best coordinators in the NFL right now. And the other thing is, too, is like the sooner the better you hire an OC, because the transfer portal opens up next Monday.
The transfer portal is, I think, more relevant than the high school recruiting, because Utah football can't fill in all of its holes with freshmen.
No, they can't.
That was a problem this year when you tried to plug the quarterback situation up with a freshman. Now, one of the commitments that you received today, that Utah football received today, that gives me, makes me raise the eyebrow a little bit, is that a Texas State quarterback commit has flipped to Utah. And forgive me, I don't pay super, super close attention to how aggressively Utah is pursuing a guy from Muskogee, Oklahoma out of high school. I don't know if this is someone that they always wanted and they were on in the early recruitment of this young man. But the Texas State thing becomes interesting because Mac Leftwich is another one of those rising young offensive coordinators who I think would potentially be a good fit for Utah, maybe be even better fit for Utah than Ben Arbuckle, because Arbuckle is going to want to throw the ball around the yard a little bit more, and it would be like a very drastic departure from what Utah wants to do. Now, maybe the thought process is, hey, what we've been trying to do is broken. Let's fix it. Let's go opposite direction. Let's go passing first. The way that Leftwich and Texas State did it was a very balanced offense this year. They were top 15 passing offense, top 15 running offense, and they scored a lot of points. So it's also a guy that doesn't have the same, as far as we know, doesn't have the same package deal type mentality with the Mateer and Arbuckle situation, because I really do believe that Ben Arbuckle is going to help at least partially make a decision on whether or not he can have a quarterback that he knows come with him. And the Oklahoma thing just makes too much sense. They'll probably be willing to pay a little bit more. Arbuckle's wife has family from that area, as we learned on the show today. And John Mateer is from Texas, which is a lot closer to Oklahoma than it is to Utah.
It is.
And you probably grew up with some awareness of Oklahoma football on the level that was different than what he knew about Utah football. And again, these are all speculative comments that I'm making, but you're going to stay tuned after this show. You're going to listen to The Drive with Spence Checketts. I'm hoping that before that show is over today at 6 p.m., you have some clarity on something for Utah football. Either like maybe not a direct answer, but hey, a press conference is happening tomorrow and this is what we're going to talk about, kind of an answer. Like, okay, this answer is coming within 8 hours. Because if you are out there right now trying to close out these final recruiting deals, and that's what the Utah coaching staff is doing, there is a mom, a dad, an uncle, an aunt, a high school coach, or whatever that is saying, hey, but who's the head coach next year? And if you're having to give a half answer, or if you're having to give a convoluted answer even, like, well, it's going to be Kyle Whittingham, but that's only for 1 year, and then it's going to be Morgan Scalley, but we promise it's going to be mostly the same. The culture is going to be the same. The level of accountability is going to be the same. The NIL support is going to be mostly the same. Same. If you have to give an answer like that, it feels like a lower percentage recruitment move. So clarity is important, and maybe clarity is just important because I feel like it's my job to know, and not knowing is driving me insane.
Yeah, it's killing us.
But these things all come into play when you're talking about the relatively short time period you have to rebuild this roster to have a better year next year. And the quarterback position is obviously job number one. Ben Arbuckle and John Mateer have neither of them have said, well, I'm going where my player's going, I'm going where my coach is going. That's me basing things on the Dion, Shador, Lincoln Riley, Caleb Williams situation. All right? John Mateer might be like, dude, I don't actually like playing for this guy very much. I'm crazy talented. I want to go play for Clemson, who doesn't even accept transfers. I'm going to make that thing happen for myself. I have no idea what John Mateer thinks about this. He's not the only quarterback available in this transfer portal, and thank goodness, because Utah's going to have to go shopping. Miller Moss, I put a poll question out on this. Miller Moss is out there, the USC quarterback from this past year. His numbers were not nearly as impressive as Mateer's. Mateer had 700 more rushing yards and 700 more passing yards, more touchdowns, fewer interceptions. But Miller Moss was a pretty decent step up from what Utah got from their young freshman who came in relief of Cam Rising. Oh, and by the way, we still don't have any clarity on the Cam Rising situation. I don't know that we will. I don't think that announcement is coming anytime soon. I don't think that decision is coming anytime soon. But Miller Moss is out there, and that's a guy who played at USC. We saw some really good things from him last year in the bowl game. He was a little bit inconsistent this year, but at his best, he was a really solid quarterback.
Yeah,
is that somebody you would want to see? Now, you're not going to put all your eggs in that basket, obviously, but is that somebody you're interested in pursuing from just an example standpoint? He's got 1 year left. He's a rental. Do you want a rental quarterback? Are you able to get something better than a rental quarterback when you're not able at this exact moment to tell these young men who their coach is going to be, who's going to be calling the plays, and who's going to be the head coach of the program next year, the year after? I mean, something tells me with the flips that have happened today, the offensive players, a running back and a quarterback that have flipped their commitments from where they were previously attached to now wanting to play for Utah. Those families, those players are being told something that is more than satisfactory. They're being given more information than we are, which is great. That's the right priority. Tell the recruits, settle their mind, and then when you get around to the rest of us, let us know. But something tells me that the plan is in place and that we're going to have answers on this stuff in, what am I going to say, 36 hours at the most?
I would say so.
Which is wild to think about, by the way, that we're that close to a very, very crucial inflection point for Utah football. That, like, the pivot of either back to what, the winning ways that you grew accustomed to, you're pivoting back to that, or you're pivoting in a new direction that may or may not work out. All of that stuff. Woo! Scary to think about, simultaneously pretty exciting.
Well, you talk about the culture thing too. It's like we talked about this earlier this year. It's like it was like a 50-50 culture because 50% of the players coming were new, and 50% were guys who have been in the program for a while. And now that's going to change next year too because you have these guys who have been in this culture for a year next year, and then you got new guys coming in. So like, how is that going to affect your team as well?
Well, that's why the head coaching question needs to be answered because, like, the Utah football culture, and it's a term we overuse, but the Utah football culture is not going to be drastically different under Morgan Scalley than it is under Kyle Whittingham. But there will be tweaks.
Yeah.
It will be slightly different. And having guys teach that to the new guys is important everywhere. The fact that Utah is an established program that has had now bad luck in back-to-back seasons with injuries and really bad luck this year and had like a collapse this year that didn't happen last year means that people are calling that into question, and the coaches and the people in the building have to call it into question too. Like, all right, what did we do wrong? Why did this year go so much more poorly than last year? It wasn't an effort situation, at least not towards the end. The effort was there. The coaching staff, when I have no reason to disbelieve them, said that they were practicing well, consistently. Guys would show up. Guys would put in the effort. Guys would have the right amount of enthusiasm. They weren't doing the locker room lawyering kind of thing. There's no reason for the coaching staff to lie to us about those things because those are all reasons that the season could have gone so bad. Just offering a little insight on those reasons that only benefits coaches. And they're like, no, we wish we could blame it on something, but things are going better in practice than they look on the field. So finding out where this team is truly at from that standpoint as you bring new players in is drastically important, is very, very crucial. Do you have like this? I'm going to use Smith Snowden as an example because it feels like he's a guy who's very, very bought in. Is Smith Snowden going to be doing the thing where he teaches what he has learned already, or is he also learning something new that he's got to teach to the new guys? That matters. I don't know how much it matters, but it does matter as these decisions are made in the next couple of I'm not even going to say couple of days, the next day and a half for Utah football. And if I'm logging on, if I'm signing on to do a show on Wednesday and we still don't have any idea about the long-term prognosis for the Utes, I'm going to be banging my head on the desk.
Just losing your mind.
Because I'm just going to be talking myself in circles for 3 more hours. Like, well, but what'll happen if this happens? And if Coach Witt comes back, but then he doesn't want to stay for more than the whole year, then what happens? And what if Morgan Scalley wants to hire this offensive coordinator? Like, if you don't have clarity on any of this, I'm just going to be driving myself nuts. So, high hopes.
Very high hopes.
My hopes are not centered on Arbuckle and Mateer like a lot of people's hopes are centered. My hopes are on trusting that a coaching staff that knows how to win football games is going to make the right decisions to get them back to those winning ways. I just leave it to the experts. But I think it might be Mac Leftwich because I'm reading the tea leaves a little bit. All right, Sean O'Connell Show wrapping up next. Then we'll get you ready for the drive with Spence Checketts. Some final thoughts on a Monday. ESPN 792.1 FM. Oh, and we'll give away some swag. We got trivia coming next. It's Utah's ESPN Radio Network. All right, Lemon Shark Poke gift card for you if you want to go grab some poke, a little poke bowl, maybe the blue pork sliders on the menu, 300 South in the Judge Building right here, just east of our Broadway studios. You got to answer this question at 877-353-0700. John Mateer, who is everyone's favorite potential transfer portal quarterback, threw for how many yards at Washington State University in 2024? Everyone's going to be chasing this kid. Utah's got to be among them. I don't have a lot of confidence that you can get somebody like that to come to Salt Lake City. How many yards did John Mateer pass for this year? 877-353-0700. The Drive with Spence Checketts is coming up next. Spence Checketts is right here in studio with me. Hi, Spence.
Great to be back, Sean. How are you, buddy?
Doing great.
You have a good holiday?
I had a delicious Saudi Thanksgiving dinner, yes.
You were abroad.
I was abroad.
How does one celebrate Thanksgiving when they're in Saudi Arabia?
Well, thankfully, the PFL said, hey, we got a bunch of people here, our missing families on, we need you to make us a fantastic feast. And the hotel obliged. It was really, really good.
Because, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not sure Thanksgiving is a big deal in that part of the world. Yeah, that's what I thought.
They're not super aware of it over there, but I actually had a funny conversation with the chef who came and was very nervously checking in to see if we were happy with the spread. And I talked to them. I was like, do you roast turkey? No, I'm from Turkey, but I've never made turkey.
That's a really good Saudi accent.
So he was awesome.
Are you good with accents? Is that a natural talent of yours?
I think it's mostly because I practice in the mirror for hours and hours and hours.
Well, look,
by myself.
We all need reps no matter what the talent is. I've always been envious of those people who just can do that, just can do impressions, do accents. My little brother's like that. I don't think I have that tool in the old tool belt. All right, what's the deal with this Ben Arbuckle gentleman? Is this going to be the guy? Is this the dude?
I don't think so. I think he's headed to Oklahoma.
Okay.
I mean, I know that Utah is positioning themselves to be major players for every available piece of talent, coaching and play talent, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the NIL stuff, they're stepping up in ways that they haven't stepped up before. Coaching salaries, they've been doing that for years. They've been trying to get closer and closer. But, Spence, you know this. I mean, we all read the USA Today articles that come out every year about Oklahoma pays their guys more. They're in the SEC. They got more money coming in from every single front. So if Oklahoma really wants Ben Arbuckle, it seems more likely he would end up there. But you know what? I don't know what his decision-making process hinges on. It can't just be money. I think that if you're John Mateer, the quarterback who probably wants to stay hitched to Ben Arbuckle because it's been good for you, you probably look at it and go, well, do I want to go play quarterback at Oklahoma that's had national championships and Heisman Trophy winners, or do I want to go play quarterback at Utah? And again, I'm not saying it's not possible to win that battle, but it's not as likely as maybe people hope it is.
It's hard to compete with that. Give me your thoughts on the time frame, not just for the OC, but for Kyle and for I don't think you can wait. Coach Wood obviously talking after the game. He was asked the question about his future. Said, of course, he was not going to announce it post-game after win against UCF. But he said, this is not the time for that. But the time for the direction, I don't think you can wait. I think it's got to be announced this week, whether it's Kyle, whether it's the OC. I think you got to get your ducks in a row.
I said, just barely, I said, by the time your show ends, I want there to be some clarity about if either not, here's the decision. There's a press conference tomorrow, and that's when you're going to find out what a decision is. Like, in the next 36 hours, you have to let people know early signing period is December 4th.
Mm-hmm.
And then the transfer portal, which I think is actually more important for Utah, that's on the 9th.
Mm-hmm.
And all of those players, talented or not, are going to want to know who's calling the offensive plays. And anyone who's going to be thinking about calling the offensive plays wants to know who they are going to work for. And look, these decisions might already be made.
Sure.
And the machinations might be happening. There's some commitments that have come down today, some flips that indicate that some clarity is being offered. We haven't gotten it yet. I think that's the correct way to prioritize. Let the players know first. But I'm very, very curious, and I think that you have to have something in the next 12 to 24 hours.
It's as big of an offseason that Utah football has had in a long time. It just is, as a result of what we all saw this year after the audacious expectations preseason. Excuse me, now things didn't work out. And it's not just wins and losses, Sean. I mean, how many games were we up at Rice-Echo Stadium for that were just boring? It was not a good, entertaining product. It's not just wins and losses. Like, you have to put a product on the field that excites the fan base. Like, the most exciting, passionate moment of your season cannot be your athletic director bitching about your new conference. You have to have more exciting on-field moments to give the fan base what they're looking for. So it's not just about offensive coordinator. It's not just about head coach. It's an infusion of talent. And as you and I have discussed probably every single Monday throughout the course of the college football season, the cruel truth is a mediocre offense puts you in the mix to win the conference this year. Mm-hmm. Like, they're not far off. But, of course, wins and losses have to look different next year, but it's got to be a better product for this fan base that continues to show out for the team.
It's interesting because when Utah was approaching Pac-12, like true relevancy in the Pac-12, we had that same conversation over and over again. Like, if you just get like a number 7 offense, you'll be in the conference championship game.
Right.
And then that happened.
Yep.
Twice.
Mm-hmm.
And if you get like a number 4 offense, you should win the conference championship game. And that first year against Oregon, you should have. Didn't show up and didn't play. But then it was like, oh, look, you now had an offense with Cam Rising kind of steering things for Andy Ludwig.
Mm-hmm.
That was respectable, wasn't elite, but was respectable, and you win conference championships.
Yep.
So the defensive product is always going to be adequate to plus, right? As long as the offensive product is adequate, you're back in the conversation very, very quickly. And I expect that to happen, and I know all Utah fans expect that to happen, but the right decisions need to be made today.
All right, before I set you loose, I know you got to go. BYU fan today. Pumped, 10-2, beat Utah, double the amount of wins from year 1 to year 2 in the Big 12. Pumped, let down that you allowed that opportunity to escape.
Both, but heavy index on pumped.
Yeah.
Like, your program is in a really, really good spot right now. If Jay Hill decides to leave to take a head coaching job, that's a step backward, and that stinks, but I don't think he's going to. So you should be happy as a BYU fan. You should be elated. Wasn't it 4 wins?
4.5 in Vegas, picked 13th in the conference by the media.
Yeah.
It's a win by any metric.
The only fan base that should be happier with their year relative to expectations than BYU is Arizona State. They're the only ones who had a better year than you did. You put yourself back in the national conversation. You've helped yourself recruiting-wise, NIL-wise, everything-wise for the next 2-3 years, and you beat your rival. I mean, that's a great football season. 10 wins is a great football season. Now, BYU has this. They did this when Bronco was there, right? Well, all we won is 9 this year. All we won is 10 this year. And you got so mad and you got so bothered that eventually he left. You can't do that. You got to be pumped. You got to be happy with what Kalani did this year, or you're going to cause that team and that program to start to sour on its own kind of success, and you don't want that to happen. Yeah,
those seniors down in BYU, like Connor Pay in that class, they're leaving with 3 10-win seasons under their belt. That's happened like once in BYU history.
Yeah, the 2020 doesn't count.
Well, believe me, I'm with you. As I said that year, we had been waiting for years to find out what BYU needed to become nationally relevant again, and we got our answer. It's a pandemic. It was a global pandemic. So
it's balanced.
It's P4 double-digit wins, 10-2 Big 12 schedule. Although I did love that Kalani took the time after the game to talk about how much he loves the Big 12 partnership. Felt a little bit like a shot across the bow up here, with folks who may not have been as thrilled. But look, by any measurable metric, if you're a BYU fan, I know it stings, but you got to be really pleased with what you just had.
Yes, and you're so much closer. Like when we're however many months, 8 months from now, when we go down to Vegas for a Big 12 Media Day, BYU is going to be in the top 3 or 4 this year, expectations-wise, heading into the 2025 season. And that's because of what happened in these last 3 months. So, yes.
Are we going to stay at the Bass Pro Shop again when we go to Vegas next year?
Absolutely,
That was
yes.
awesome.
They had mermaids swimming in the tank.
You can play blackjack and get a power drill. prior to the Big 12 media
I'm
days.
going to get me a pontoon boat. All right.
Throw a little craps, then go do our job.
What's coming up on the drive?
Mostly kind of a look back on the Utah football season. There was the BYU football season. We'll talk about some bowl projections. We'll do a little jazz. Will Hardy snatching defeat out of victory last night with a timeout before Colin could hit that game-winning shot. We'll do a little NFL, a crazy weekend of pro football. We have Stevenson Sylvester. We have Tom Haberstroh. We have Spencer Hall, one of my favorites, to talk college football with, and Andy Larson from the Trib.
Stay tuned for the drive with Spence Checketts. That's all for the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 792 FM, part of the Utah ESPN Radio Network.